All right. What's up, good people? We are live in the building. Make sure that you hit that like button, whether you're catching it right now or whether you're catching it after it is uploaded, whether you're catching it on the restream, however you're watching it, make sure you hit that like button. New people here, go ahead and subscribe. Appreciate each and every one of you. And we got an interesting show for you today. We'll be joined by the culture clinician. I'm about to mess up his name already. We'll be joined by the culture clinician. About to get into a number of topics here. So strap on in. Let's get ready to go. Let's get it.
Peace, folks. This is X from TPOT Media. Open your mind and wake your black ass up. You know what time it is. Hit that damn like button as you make your way in the door. Grab a seat, settle in, get ready. It's the Grown Man Hour with your host, my man, Bernard Riley.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mumia Obsidian Ali. You know who I am. I need no introduction, right? And you're listening to the Grown Man Hour with my man Bernard Riley, heard weekdays right here on YouTube. What do you think about that? How about that? Now let's get back on with the show. Thank you.
All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Make sure you hit the like button. We got Logan JJ. Shout out to the Early Bird Squad. That's Logan JJ. Shout out to all of those who make it in bright and early before we even get things started. Shout out to Kosher Clinician, who I just spoke to in the back. Shout out to him. We'll be bringing him up shortly for the interview. Saint Valoy in the building says, good morning, everyone. Just being jazzy says, morning, Bernard. Good morning to you. Hood Conservative says, dropping the link already. No, I was just dropping it for the guests. I normally send it right to the email, but I just dropped it in the chat room. Hopefully everybody don't click on it all at once. I don't want that actually until later on in the show. But shout out to Aaron B, Hoop Jargon. Shout out to everybody who made it in already. See Darth Low Trademark, who's a channel member. Shout out to you. I gotta actually put together some members only content. Seeing as I got channel members now, I gotta drop some members only content. See how that go. Freeman Journals in the building. Shout out to you. I just recently gave you a wrench after last night's debacle. You're getting timed out for no reason. But no, I didn't even realize you didn't have one. I thought you already had one. But shout out to you. Shout out to you for being a member. Thank you, and I appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who supports the channel in any way, shape, or form. One little thing I'll do before we get into the conversation is if you missed the conversation last night on Brother Xavier's show,
Only from TPOT Media. Open your minds.
if you missed that, you do want to go check that out. We had a really, really good conversation over there with me, him, Little Big Nate, SKC. Who else was on there? Trader NBD, Art. I'm gonna mess his name up, but y'all know Art. I think that's the painting Negro, the one who be doing the paintings. But I think Art Nutshell. Okay, I'm gonna mess his name up, but you know who I'm talking about. Y'all know him. But yeah, we had a good conversation over there. Make sure you go and check that out when you get a chance. Truth is, I know it in the building. Shout out to you. But without further ado, we're going to bring up the man of the hour, the guest of honor here, the kosher clinician.
What's up, brother? How you doing, brother Bernard? How you doing, sir?
I am doing great. Now, that's the name you just go by. Just call you kosher clinician, or do you got a name? What do you prefer me call you?
Well, just call me the kosher clinician.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Call me that. Yes, sir.
All right. Absolutely. One thing I normally do before we get into it, give us a little bit of two different backstories. One, your backstory. First, just your backstory, just who you are, what you do, and then the backstory of how did you even find this space? What brought you to YouTube, or what we call Black YouTube? Or by extension, the Black manosphere, and all this whole little network of men, particularly Black men, who talk about a lot of various wide-ranging issues. So, what exactly?
Right.
Yeah,
so brother, I've been following content from this space for years. I've always been behind the scenes studying and watching. Mm-hmm. But I am a licensed clinical therapist. I'm matriculated at the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, representing the Tar Heels. And so I wanted to add an added element to this this section or this group because mental health is paramount in the Black community. It's something that's often more or less minimized. Mm-hmm. And Kevin Samuels a lot talks about the necessary or the virtues of mental health, something that a lot of our people struggle with many times, but a lot of times we don't talk about it because it's stigmatized. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to come into this space out of a process in the clinical term called sublimation. Sublimation means instead of doing something negative, you take that negative and turn it into something good. And a lot of times, Bernard, people self-medicate through sex, through alcoholism, through violence. But I decided to take this show as a licensed professional to turn things around through a healthy ego defense mechanism called sublimation, to let men know that they have hope outside of the issues that they are dealing with. And so I decided to add that added element to the space to help empower Black men, because my show is a culmination of two things. The kosher clinician, which more or less look at things from a clinical perspective, but also the Manhood Chronicles, which look at things through group therapy and why men are going through the challenges that they're going through. Because many times, Bernard, people don't hear our stories. Many men don't share their stories. Mm-hmm. And they suffer in pain, and no man should have to suffer in pain or suffer in silence, because as I've said in the past, Bernard, that a broken man is a hopeless man, and a hopeless man is a dangerous man. So I want to add that element to the space, something I think is needed, because we can talk about money, we can talk about finances, we can talk about game, we can talk about whatever, but it all starts in the mind. Theology said whatever a man thinks, that's what he is. So that's why I decided to come to the space. And actually, O'Shea gave me, I came in without 58 subs back in the day. And actually, O'Shea, I was reaching out to him, and he told me to check you out. And that's how I wanted to. But, O'Shea, I started off with him back in March, I believe. And it's been going hard ever since, man.
All right on. Shout out to O'Shea. Always connecting folks. Always connecting.
No doubt.
Yeah. So when we were talking about a topic, you said you want to do a topic on the metacognitions of masculinity, and like I told you in the email, I had to look that up to see what the hell what the hell was it. So, but when I looked it up, it's something there. It's something there.
Right.
So go ahead and just give us, I guess, a breakdown on what are metacognitions, what are those, and then we'll start there and then work our way to Black men.
Right. So the metacognitions of masculinity, Bernard, more or less encapsulate or pontificates men thinking about being men. This journey of manhood is very arduous. It's very hard. So men have to think about being men. We have to be very intentional. Just like Bernard Raleigh. Bernard Raleigh had to go through hills and valleys, victories and failures in order to become Bernard Raleigh. And so manhood is about doing the same thing. But oftentimes, there's an old saying that says no man lives on an island unto himself. Many men don't have the help and the assistance of the elders to help them deal with the pathologies that are going on inside their head. So in order to be successful in America, we have to be intentional as men. We have to think about what we're thinking about to overcome the obstacles that many black men are dealing with. Unfortunately, and because many black men come from homes where the fathers are absent, it becomes even more perilous because we don't get the assistance that we need. So the metacognitions of masculinity is thinking about what you're thinking about in order to become successful, but also in order to reach your purpose.
Right. So yeah, when I was looking into it, it was dealing a lot with just the type of thoughts that you have
right
in your head, and I think a lot of times with black people, this is just me just being a layman outside looking in, just not well on the inside, but just observing black people. I think we a lot of times can almost like we live inside our head sometimes, where it seems as if we overthink things. Like when I was looking into it, I saw something. I was actually trying to find it because I wrote it down or took a screenshot of it, and I couldn't find it and pull it up. So that's why I'm fumbling right here, because I wanted to make sure I get this right. So yeah, you have to bear with me. I'm gonna get it pulled up. I'm gonna get it pulled up eventually. Okay, here we go. Yes, a number of things that I had here, but okay, yeah, here it is. The type of things that happen that ultimately control our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
What is your thoughts on black people? Because, and this is it sort of piggybacks on the conversation, and you probably didn't even want to take it this way, but this is where I'm going with it.
That's fine.
This is where I'm going with it. Oh wait, no, Kevin, no, this ain't for everybody yet. This is a one-on-one discussion. It's one-on-one discussion, man. Fall back. I just put that in the link for the one-on-one guest. Okay, yeah. Come back later. And you looking sharp down there. I see you done put on your. Hold on. Hold on. This is a one-on-one portion, but you done got all snazzied up, man.
I'll come back. Salute to the kosher clinician. I'll come back. You put the StreamYard in there, but I'll fall in the back and just listen.
You done got all shiny. This is
how I typically dress. This is how I typically. I was Kevin Samuels before Kevin Samuels was Kevin Samuels, even though he's a little bit older than me.
Yeah, just in case you can't make it back, I just wanted to bring you up so everybody can see you, because you took the time to get all oily and shiny and put on your nice clothes. I didn't want you to waste a good outfit.
I woke up like this. So yeah, I'll fall in the back. I'll be listening in and out. Everybody, by the way, before you cam me down, everybody donate $10 to Bernard. He didn't tell me to do it. I just, he's the best content creator on YouTube. I'll fall back.
That.
Have a go.
Yeah, I ain't want him to waste that good outfit he put on, so I'm gonna let everybody see. No doubt. All right. So yeah, Kevin crazy. Okay. Man, what was I going? Where was I going? He done threw me off. I done forgot my question.
No, you're fine, man. You're fine.
No, I was talking about the bad things that happen that control our thoughts. This is what I was getting into. I think black people a lot of times will pull from things in the past that they didn't even experience, and will let those things control their thoughts and manipulate how they think and how they react to stuff, how they respond to white people, how they respond to the opposite sex.
Right.
I think black people just constantly in our head. So,
right.
What's your thoughts on that, and how does that relate to to the subject, to the topic of metacognition?
So I think your question is, why do we continue to have these what I call circuitous thoughts? And so, is that what you're asking, Bernard?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, there's a such thing called healthy ego defense mechanisms, and there's another thing called unhealthy ego defense mechanisms. Many people, unfortunately, Mr. Rowley, have been conditioned to more or less take the negative instead of taking the positive. And because of that, we continue to, suffer in our own mire and our own stew, because we have not learned how to deal with those pathologies in a healthy and effective manner. Also, unfortunately, in our society, therapy is stigmatized. You know, we don't talk about it. You know, we say we'll pray about it or we'll take it to God. And there's nothing wrong with taking it to God, because as a clinical therapist, we look at things through the lens of the biopsychosocial and the spiritual model. But we don't have the proper faculties to help us process through a lot of the pathologies that we're dealing with. And because of that, we continue to suffer. And also because, you know, unfortunately, you know, most men are told to just deal with it. So we deal with those negative metacognitions instead of having somebody to help us process it and to find healthy coping skills to get over the hurdles that we're dealing with.
Like you said, healthy ego defense mechanisms. Elaborate on exactly what those are, because I think we understand ego and we understand defense mechanism. So what do you mean by
right. So a healthy ego defense mechanism, Mr. Rowler, would be what you're doing. You know, sublimation is a healthy ego defense mechanism. But a negative ego defense mechanism would be something like repression. You know, repression is an unconscious thought. You're not aware of it. So just say if you've been through trauma, you've been traumatized by, say, your girlfriend broke up with you, or she took your child or something. You know it's there, but you just, you know, when you don't know it's there, you repress it because you don't want to deal with it. But then when something happens, it comes back to surface, and it can lead to violence, or it can lead to self-medication. So repression is a negative ego defense mechanism, but undoing or sublimation, undoing means to take something bad and turn it into something good. That's a healthy ego defense mechanism. And what you're doing on YouTube is a sign of a healthy ego defense mechanism, because you not only are empowering Black men, but you're also empowering yourself. And so we have to learn how to use strategies, but also do collaboration to deal with the pathologies that actually lie in our heads as men, but learn how to overcome it in a consistent manner, because unfortunately, a lot of times there are not proper safeguards in society to help us deal with those pathologies on an ongoing basis.
All right. Snuggles asked a good question here. Can sex be used as a healthy ego mechanism?
Well, I would say if you're going to use it in a healthy relationship with your wife, yes. But if you're just having sex randomly with random women, I would say no, because it can be not only dangerous, but you know, you're not dealing with the problem. You're just medicating the issue to help you deal with the pain. So a healthy ego defense mechanism does not do things out of a neurotic impulse, but it does it with seasoned conditioning, and also learning how to think about the consequences that are going to happen. Metacognition means just to be aware and to think about what you're thinking about. And unfortunately, Bernard, most folks don't have the proper skills to do that. So,
okay, well, as far as the sex, thanks for that question, Snuggles. When you say, can sex be used as a healthy ego mechanism, you said that it could be wrong, it could be unhealthy if you're just doing it to medicate a problem. What if you're just doing it just because you're having sex with a lot of different women, just because, hey, you enjoy it, it makes you feel good, you're not trying to medicate a problem, it's just you're just a man wanting some sex and just having sex?
Well, that's why I say ideally it should be used within the context of a committed relationship, hopefully with your wife. But you know, when you're having rampant, unprotected sex, being promiscuous as a man, you know, at the time it might seem like it's being healthy, but then, you know, it can create new problems, you know. So if you use sex to cover pain, then you're also using people. You know, in behavioral psychology, there's an old saying, Bernard, to say that needs drive behaviors. And so if a person's not getting their needs met, you know, they can turn to sex. But if that sex becomes very neurotic, impulsive, and you're doing things that are dangerous, like say you're going to raunchy neighborhoods, not only are you risking your health, but you're also potentially risking your career as a person. And listen, I'm sure every man has been through that dark alley at some point in his life, and many of us came out unscathed. But that's not the healthy way to deal with issues. Like I said, ideally, to deal, you know, it's probably better to deal with a woman that, you know, doesn't mind allowing you to make love to her, hopefully in a committed relationship. But having sex with rampant women and using them as, you know, what can I call it, objects of gratification, you know, it can lead to not only pain for the woman, but also a neurotic impulse for the man. So it depends on how you flex it. Right.
Yeah. If you're doing it to medicate a bigger problem, yeah, that's something that you need to work out. But if you, I talk about how post-marriage, how I was, you know, was out there engaging in some casual sex, and I don't I mean, maybe if I psychoanalyze myself, maybe I was trying to medicate a problem, but at the end of the day, it was just I was happy and I was just enjoying doing what I was doing.
Right.
It was protected, so I don't see nothing necessarily wrong with a man doing that. But I think the larger point you're making is that you do need to be conscious. You need to think about it. I guess that goes back to the metacognition.
Right.
You think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and if you're doing it because of some. Because to put a Band-Aid on something else that's bothering you, then I see where you're going right there. How that can definitely
right. Yeah, look, Bernard Shakespeare said it better than me. He said, "To thy own self be true." So if you know what your limitations are, if you know how to corral yourself, if you know how to keep that fire contained, then kudos to you. But if you're a man, you don't really know your sexuality. You don't know how to contain it. And you're just out here making wildfires, and that can be dangerous because it's risky. If you're tricking, you can get caught. But also it's dangerous because you can get a woman impregnated, or you could get a disease. And listen, being protected does not always protect you from disease. You can get HPV. So condoms not always 100%. If you're dealing with HPV. So like I said, if the person understands who he is as a person, then I would say the person might be okay. But in general, I don't think it's the best method, but I understand that some men do it and they come unscathed. So,
right. Be careful. Don't mention the word tricking on my show because it's they gonna come out the woodwork and try to make the whole show about tricking. That's I got some audience members that's how they get down. But shout out to Freeman's Journal in the building. He said, well, first off, thank you for sending the first super chat on today. Thank you for putting 5 on. I got 5 on. Right. Trunk Joy said Bernard can't talk about tricking for a month. I know. I said we not talking about that on this show for a month. Now, gotta go easy. He said I thought Bernard was talking to TD Jakes. Yeah, they be bringing the jokes, man. You better be ready, though. I know
that's good.
When Mr. Fantastic funny. Get in here, you better be ready for him.
That's funny, man. That's funny.
Freeman's Journal says. It says, is a man having sex, not dangerous sex, in need of mental health services normally? I think I understand that question.
Right. Not necessarily. Some men use sex as a way to help them cope, but they know how to keep it corralled. Mm-hmm. It depends on if it's neurotic or if it's controlled. If it's controlled, then one could argue that it's not necessarily an indictment against the person's psyche. But if it's uncontrolled, which is neurotic, then one could argue that it can be very dangerous. So it just depends on the context of the situation, the duration, and the frequency of what the person is doing. But listen, sex can become very addictive because you're releasing dopamine to the brain, and it can become a drug. And so some people, just like some people, Bernard, are more genetically predisposed to the alcoholism. Some men are more genetically predisposed towards sexual impulses. And while all men love sex and want sex because we're wired for sex, I think some tend to have it, or that urge or need, more frequently. So you have to be careful, but you have to know yourself as a person first.
All right, well, let me throw this controversial question out there.
Right.
Do you think, or do you know, or do you just believe that black men are more genetically predisposed to sexual impulse?
Well, listen, I think that black men are some of the most masculine men in the world. So I think we have, in general, if we're in good relationship, have higher testosterone levels. So yes, I will agree with that. I think black men are more genetically predisposed for sexual inclinations, than any other ethnic group, because I believe we have higher testosterone levels. But I believe our testosterone levels have been sabotaged due to alcoholism, smoking, unhealthy eating, toxic relationships, environmental toxins, not getting proper sunlight like vitamin D, and not drinking plenty of clean water or alkaline water. So I would say in general, I think black men
guilty
are
on
more
that
genetic.
One. Right when you said that, I had to reach for my water. I'm guilty on that one.
Right.
So I talk about that a lot too, how we got, the most testosterone, and that's a factor in the equation in our behavior and impulses. I have said that before, and I talked about that. Yeah, Freeman's Journal. I drink a lot of coffee. Shout out to you. But no, that's a good point when you say that you think that our diet, alcohol, drugs, smoking, all of that has an effect on our testosterone and our masculinity in the
Right. Right.
in the whole works. Yeah, that's an interesting point. You talked about the healthy ego defense mechanisms, and you said there's healthy and unhealthy and everything. Why do we seem to choose the negative, the unhealthy? Why do it seem to be the case that, I mean, maybe it's the same way across the board with other groups, but it seems to be the case that black people, or we can focus on black men or black people in general, seem to go the negative route.
Well, there's an old saying, Bernard, that says that that the black men and black women are the muse of society. And I would say from a spiritual perspective, we tend to take the negative route because human beings by nature want to take the path of least resistance. I think the path of least resistance is part of the human conditioning. And so because the path of least resistance is part of the human conditioning, that's what human beings tend to take to help them deal with the pathologies that they're dealing with. Now, if you look at it from the biblical context, it's called original sin. So human beings are this, if you believe in the Bible, are genetically predisposed to be sinful. So we take the easier route because that's the easiest thing to do. But it takes a strong man that has intestinal fortitude to take the harder route. And taking that harder route, Bernard, a lot of times builds character. But most people don't want to do the metacognitions to do that, Bernard, because it takes a lot of work. But, as theology says, gold without fire will never become pure gold. And so the person must ask themselves the question, are they willing to go through the fire of life to become the best version of themselves? And unfortunately, most people don't. They want to take the easy route. That's why they never become perfected in their pursuit for righteousness or pursuit of excellence. So.
Right on. Let's see. Right now I'm doing what I normally do, and that's dropping the link to the Kosher Clinicians channel. Moderators, y'all know what to do. Take that link, copy and paste it, and spam it in the chat room throughout the conversation. Just keep doing it gradually throughout the flow of the conversation, because it's always new people coming in, new people coming out. So
right.
So yeah, so don't just assume that it's just it's the same group of people the whole time. No, it's constantly new people coming in and constantly new people coming out. So make sure that you drop that link in there all throughout the show. Thank you, Freeman's Journal. See, I knew I did right by giving you a wrench. He already doing right. He already doing right.
Right.
People get them wrenches forever. Y'all just sit there, don't never drop no links. Y'all just got lazy with the wrench. Shout out to and hit the like button too. And shout out to Snuggles. It says make sure you play my music. Nope, I'm not playing it. Play my music because all this talk about you are tricking. I don't even think it's a term in other cultures, but yours very interesting. Yeah, I'm pretty sure other people do. I'm pretty sure other cultures do use that term, but it's a weird overemphasis here in ours. It is a weird overemphasis. Let's see, what else did I have? I had to research this topic. I had to go do some homework. And my notes are all messy.
No, you're fine, brother. You're
fine. Notes are all messy. Can't even properly find my questions. I'm looking in the audience for questions. Metacognition means awareness and understandings of one's own thoughts. That was one thing that was confusing. When I was coming up with my questions for this.
Right.
That it does sound redundant, when you say thinking about your thoughts. Mm-hmm. But is that more of something that you're supposed to do to make sure that you're not thinking about the wrong things? Is that more or less what the thinking about your thoughts is about? Or what's the purpose for spending a lot of time thinking about your thoughts?
Well, a man on purpose, Bernard, is actually thinking about his thoughts. The Bernard Rally show did not come into fruition until Bernard Rally had to use the process of critical thinking to think about how to become the best version of Bernard Rally. Just say Bernard Rowley wrote down a sketch about the show that he wanted to do, but you didn't think about how you were going to think about making that show become successful. That show would have been a flop. But because you are consciously versus unconsciously thinking about what you are thinking about, then your show is successful. Now listen, we have unconscious thoughts that more or less pervade our minds at all times. But the conscious thoughts a lot of times are more intentional than the unconscious thoughts. And sometimes those conscious thoughts filter into the subconscious to more or less recalibrate the conscious again. And so your job is to constantly think about thinking how to become the best version. That's something called critical thinking, which is a form of metacognition. And unfortunately, many folks are not critical thinkers. They're just surface thinkers. They don't think beneath the surface. And because of that, they don't become perfected or refined in their walks of life. Listen, life is fleeting. At some point, you will expire. At some point, I'm going to expire. You're a young buck. You know, I'm 50 years old. Half of my life is over with. But before I leave this planet, I want to make sure I inspire as many young men, but also black men as possible, because many times black men have low self-esteem. They don't love themselves. They don't have standards. They don't stand on principles. And because of that, Bernard, they tend to suffer in silence and deal with unsavory women that don't have their best benefits. So I would say to men, the more intentional you are, and like theology said, write the vision, right? Make it plain. And when you do that on a continuum, then you have a higher chance of getting the outcomes that you want, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. When looking at experiences, your experience, their reaction, experience are the reactions people have as a result of their cognitive appraisal. One problem that I would think that black people run into, or people in general, but let's focus on black people, if their appraisal isn't being done properly, you know, if your thoughts and everything you got in your head, and they're influencing what you do, but your thoughts that you have circulating in your head are based off, you know, how you appraise a certain situation, how you assess a certain situation. Do people run into the problem where just their assessment, their appraisal isn't right? So that's why they're running into the problem. So even if they're thinking about how they're thinking, you know, maybe they're just still not doing it right. Like, how does somebody get over that hurdle?
Right. That's an excellent question. You're correct. That's a very good question, Bernard. So listen, so a healthy ego defense mechanism can be more or less hampered by, in the clinical term, in cognitive behavior therapy and many of the treatment models, called a negative schema. A negative schema is something that you see a lot of times with a lot of our women, you know, and men, because it's a thinking error. A thinking error, Bernard, is more or less when you see the evidence, you don't want to deal with it, or you more or less minimize. Like, you know, Kevin Salmon talks about sign language. He talks about shame, insults, guilt, and need to be right. Well, I created
you called that, hold on real quick, you called that a negative, I didn't mean to put that on me, I meant to put that on you. You called that a negative schema?
Right, a schema, right. So a schema in the clinical term means a thought pattern, right? But I created a term to make that term become more realized. I created a term called a schema affliction. Schema means a fixated pattern, but affliction means because of pain. And so, you know, I created another term similar to, you know, what Kevin created. Kevin created a term called shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right, where I could create a term saying that most modern women and men are deaf. And deaf is more or less due to a concept called, what's the word? Cognitive dissonance, right? Mm-hmm. And so deaf, Bernard, more or less is pontificated on the concept of, many times when you give our women the evidence, they deny the evidence, right? They become enraged when you present them the evidence. They argue, do ad hominem attacks. And the last stage, Bernard, is that they fight or flee. And they do that, Bernard, because it's cognitive dissonance. They can't receive the information that's being inputted into their head. So even though they are thinking about what they are thinking about, it's a negative, or what's called a maladaptive schema or maladaptive thought process that's keeping them in that cycle of detriment that they're actually dealing with.
How do they get out of that cycle, though? That's where the problem is. How do somebody get out of there?
Right. But listen, Michael Jackson said it better than me. He said, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And so one of the greatest indictments against a lot of our women is that they don't want to look at themselves. Men too. But I think men are more keen to looking at themselves, but because women are insular, right? Women are made inward. They don't want to think about themselves because I call it the Medusa complex. If they look at themselves, they might crack or they might not like what they see in the mirror. So it's an unhealthy ego defense mechanism called avoidance. So they avoid the behavior instead of dealing with it. When you face your fears, you become a better version of yourself. If you avoid what you're dealing with, you continue that cycle of negative reactions.
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, that's explaining, because like we run into that problem in this space a lot, because we talk a lot about women, and women have been, you know, shielded and protected by, you know, society, protected from criticism, you know, and the men are the villains, the women are good, men are Joker, women are Batman in the story, and the men are Joker. And one thing that men do in these spaces is that, yeah, they put up that mirror.
Right.
They put up that mirror to women, and that's why a lot of times they have that visceral reaction. That's why that's why they bringing out all the pitchforks and torches and lanterns for Kevin Samuels.
Right.
Because you know, his platform has gotten that big, putting that mirror up to him. So yeah, that's a really good thing. That's a really good breakdown of what's happening. Would you say that Black people more than other people resist that mirror of looking at oneself? Because like I'm, you know, with the Black community, this is a reoccurring thing on my show. Like we start talking about things that Black people need to do, and then we start hearing a lot of different excuses. We start hearing a lot of different things. Oh, we can't do this. It's racism. It's this. Well, this system right here, and that's why this won't work or that won't work. And a lot of times it seems as if some people are either putting up the wall or the excuse, or maybe it's some kind of defense mechanism, because they don't want to acknowledge that I'm underperforming in this area, or my people are underperforming in this area.
Right.
And we don't want to just look in the mirror and say, yeah, we got to do better. So then we got to create this other thing or exaggerate this other thing, because it could be a legitimate problem in your way.
Right.
But you won't exaggerate and make that problem bigger. Like, what's your breakdown of why we do that?
Well, you know, victimhood is an easy outlet. Listen, I tell people it's nothing wrong with saying that I was victimized, but I don't have to remain a victim. Everybody have been victimized, Bernard, at some level of their life, right?
Right.
You know, but they didn't stay there. Now, if you want to look at it from the lens of theology, Jesus was a victim of the cross, but he didn't stay there. He had a purpose. And so when your purpose supersedes your victimhood, you were triumphant. But most people don't have a purpose because they have not been given purpose. And normally, Bernard, purpose comes from fathers. But how can you define purpose when damn near 75%, 78% of our children are born in out of wedlock homes? They don't have dads to instill purpose. But then those men, Bernard, are actually broken themselves. So, you know, I think Frederick Douglass said that it's easy to repair children than to repair broken men. And so you have a lot of broken men that have schema afflictions. And so, you know, that cycle, or that degenerative cycle, continues. There's a lot of pathologies in the Black community that need to be addressed. Some of these pathologies would not be erased, Bernard, maybe, you know, until 2 or 3 generations. You and I will probably be dead by then. But what I got to do and what you got to do, because I think you got a little son, you got to lay the groundwork. You got to teach your son principles, what to look for, what to look out for, so he don't have to go do the things that you went through, but also so that he does not more or less remain the victim. You have to acknowledge your victimhood, but you don't have to remain in that victimhood, because if you remain in it, you will become a victim of your own thinking. So, and I think if that answers the question more or less.
Yeah, you brought up something. This is something that I haven't really thought about, because I've always said, you know, that it takes men, it takes fathers in the home. Men gotta raise men, gotta raise their sons. You know, come hell or high water, do whatever you got to do, get custody, you know. But you said something like, you know, it's easier to fix children than what it is to fix broken men. But whenever I talk about it, this may be an unanswerable one. So I'm just picking your brain on this one.
Right.
We're talking about the men needing to fix the boys, needing to raise their sons to produce the type of men that we need to see. But if these men themselves are broken, it's almost like you're sending in the broken to fix the problem.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, how does that work? And that could be one of the stumbling blocks of trying to fix the larger macro problem. So
right.
Thoughts on that one?
Right, that's an excellent question. I love the word you use, macro. Macro means the bigger, right? So we deal with the micro, the meso, and the macro. The issue that we got to deal with first is the individual, and then from the individual, we got to look at the group, which is the community, and then we got to look at the broader community, which is the nation. But the way we fix that, I think it lies at the heart of the matter, which is a spiritual crisis. Unfortunately, Bernard, regardless if you believe in, even though most Christian churches now, in my opinion, are flawed. I grew up very conservative, Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal holiness. I grew up in it. I don't necessarily live by it now because I don't think it adequately addressed masculinity, but I think the answers are in the Bible. The Bible is very red pill, in my opinion. But the way I
did a show on that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's very red pill. It's very, the blueprint is powerful. I think we got to get back to teaching fundamentalist or more or less kosher theology. Kosher theology is righteous theology. It's raw and unfiltered. It doesn't have GMOs in it. It doesn't tell our women what they want to hear. It preaches the objective truth. I think once we get back to the spiritual part of the matter, Bernard, it starts with the spirit first, right? Once we get back to the spiritual matter, I think everything else will take care of itself. But until we get to the spiritual matter, we can have millions of dollars thrown on welfare programs or millions of dollars thrown on whatever. But human beings are social beings. And boys get that direction from their father, just like Christ got his direction from the Father. When he was broken, he didn't stay there. When he went to the cross, he didn't stay there. He says, not my will, but thy will be done, because his purpose was not his pain. His purpose was to do the will of the Father. When your purpose is your pain, Bernard, you stay in that broken condition. But when your purpose is greater than your pain, based on the admonition that your Father has given you, your purpose will supersede that temporary pain. Listen, in football, they say that pain is temporary, Bernard, but glory is forever. And so the question that I would pose to the audience is that, do you want glory or do you want pain?
You said kosher theology. You briefly touched on that. I have no idea what that is. You briefly touched on what you meant by kosher theology, but elaborate on that one a little more. That's a new term.
Right.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't even know what kosher means. Let me make sure I know what that. Yeah, explain what kosher mean, and then get to kosher theology.
Well, kosher. I use the word the kosher clinician as a backdrop. So kosher just means pure. It's unfiltered. It doesn't have any impurities in it, right? So the gospel say preach the unadulterated word of truth. So when something is unadulterated, it means it has not been contaminated. In theology, when you lay down with a woman, the Bible, Paul said all other sins are done outside the body, but fornication and adultery is done with the body. So you become contaminated. But when something is kosher, it's clean, it's pure. It doesn't have filters. It's raw, it's organic. So when something is kosher, just like the Levites, it's old saying in the New Testament, they talked about the feast of the unleavened bread. A little leaven leavens up the whole lump. So in order for something to be pure, righteous, it must be pure. And I think that the purity of truth has more or less been eradicated from most modern churches, Bernard. And because of the purity of truth has been eradicated, you see the cesspool that you're seeing now. So we want to have kosher truth. And that's why I started my show as a licensed therapist, because I tell men that if it's not 7, meaning there are 7 steps that a man must go through to become optimized, it's not kosher. If it's not kosher, it's not right. So a person has to be kosher in order to be righteous, like the Levites. And those 7 steps, Bernard, for men to be kosher are understanding family, female psychology, faith, finances, world travel, politics, male health, and male mental health. Once he can master those 7 elements, then he will become optimized, and therefore he will become righteous, because 7 in Hebrew is the skivah, and 7 is complete. And so just like God rested on the 7th day, he was complete because his purpose had been more or less met.
Yeah, we're going to revisit those 7 things that you mentioned there. That was we're gonna revisit that. And shout out to RM for acknowledging my thumbnail brilliance. She says that don't worry, everything's fine. Thumbnail is awesome. Yeah, I be putting in a lot of work on them thumbnails. I don't know how to do Photoshop, but I got I got a nice little app that allows me to do something.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of work, man. Them thumbnails is working.
yeah, but in your practice, how many, or I should say, what percentage of your clients or patients are Black men? Because I have a perception of this: that Black men don't go get therapy, don't go get help. We just try to alpha our way through it. I got this. Like, that's why in that picture I got the guy with the smiling with the thumbnail, like, hey, everything's fine. But the guy coming out of his head is just screaming. The guy in his head is screaming.
Right.
So what percentage of your clients or patients would you say are Black men?
Well, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. I don't know, because I've had some that have come, but here's the quandary. Most clinical therapists are white female, then Black female, then white male, then some are, multicolor, multi-ethnic, LGBTQ, but Black men make up a very small percentage. But the percentage that makes up therapy from a red pill perspective is even smaller. Listen, the red pill is powerful because it helps men to see things for what it is. I call that cognitive restructuring, but also, Bernard, cognitive remodification. And so most therapists won't touch what I'm doing because it's not mainstream. But this space has been powerful to a lot of men. I got men coming in my inbox want to do consultations, because I do non-diagnostic consultations. I'm not diagnosing, because if I diagnose you, you might have to have medication. But with non-diagnostic consultations, we talk about parameters around the issue, and then I can lead you in the right direction.
Well, but you do prescribe or medication to people, because you said it like that. Medication is something that you don't do or you don't want to.
Right. So if I'm in an agency, right, a lot of time agencies, we can refer our clients to psychiatrists within the agency, right, or we can more or less give them recommendations or referrals outside of the agency. So let's say if you have ADHD, well, it would not be possible for me to treat you if you're not taking medication. Normally, ADHD takes cognitive behavior therapy and also medication. But when I do non-diagnostic consultations, I'm not diagnosing the person. I'm just more or less assessing them based on what they tell me. And then I consult with them to give them parameters to get the help that they need outside of me. But when I see clients in my space, some of them actually need therapy. I mean, not therapy, but need medication, but all of them don't. Because remember, Bernard, that as a therapist, we look at things through the lens of the bio, which is the body, psycho, which is the mind, social, which is the environment, and then the spirit, because human beings are integrated. They're all four. In theology, it says, I pray that your soul, body, and spirit be blameless. So human beings are integrated. If one thing is off kilter, Bernard, then it can throw everything else off. Many Black men have low vitamin D because we don't get enough sunlight. But vitamin D is a catalyst hormone that jumpstarts everything in your body. So I take about 5,000. Yeah, I take about 5,000 IUs of vitamin D because I'm often in the office. And so if I don't get that sunlight, you can get it from the sun. But if I don't get that sunlight, I take vitamin D. So vitamin D is a catalyst hormone, zinc, and all that stuff is good for a man's testosterone. When men have low T, then they don't feel strong and masculine. But when their testosterone levels are up, it makes them more not only aggressive sometimes, but it also helps them, to create the purpose and the mission. Men with low T tend to have depression, and also
when you say low T, you mean low testosterone, right?
Yes, sir. Low testosterone.
Sure,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. You're 100% correct. Low testosterone. So men of them, Bernard, they don't know about therapy. Men of them think it's stupid. Therapy is a stigma a lot of times in the Black community. Like I remember my granddad would say, "You're crazy as hell." And so we just deal with it. And then we just deal with it because men by nature are fixers. And so we internalize our issues instead of more or less understanding that in the multitude of counselors, Bernard, there is safety. So men now have safety through this space, but they have a greater level of safety because they have men like you and I helping them fight through or circumnavigate through the issues that they are dealing with as men. So I count the honor to be in the space to serve the brotherhood. I do it because I'm genuine. But it does come with some risk because some of the things we talk about are not mainstream, and it can be deemed to be controversial, unfortunately.
Yeah, wow. I like how you did scientifically break down how all of this.
Shout out to Ike.
Oh yeah.
That's my homie. I love Ike.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too.
That's a good one. Ike is funny, man.
Oh man.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, but no, I like how you explained and scientifically broke down how a lot of this new phenomenon, and my sons are you know, I don't want to say victim, but they fell prey to this, I guess, just the modern times of, you know, boys, they don't go outside as much. And you talk about that, you're missing out on the sun, you're missing out on your vitamin D, and the vitamin D is a jump starter for everything, and not having that reduces your testosterone. So we used to always just say, man, these boys, they're not getting out, they're not doing stuff, they're not active, and they're losing their masculinity and their testosterone.
Yes, sir. Right.
I've never heard somebody really truly break it down scientifically as to why.
Right.
So I do love that you do that.
Right.
The black men that you do that you do treat, do you notice, what differences do you notice with dealing with or treating black men? We're going to circle back to the amount of women that dominate that field and make it to where men don't even feel that it's for them.
Right.
It's like we're just an untreated community when it comes to that. Right. And we're going to talk about you know, the need for men to actually to do what you do. But as far as your patients, what are some of the differences that you see with black men that well, I guess what's more prevalent, what's more prominent with them versus other people when they come to you?
Well, I think what you see with black men a lot of times, Bernard, is what you see with a lot of men, but it tends to also happen a lot with our men. It's a lack of respect, the lack of honor, and also the lack of support a lot of times. A lot of them feel like their women are not cooperative, which more or less exacerbates the stress, which in essence diminishes their masculinity, which in essence... Right.
That's a talking point in this space. Right. Now, are you saying you literally, outside of, you know, consuming this type of black YouTube or black manosphere content, you actually see that on the ground in your practice?
Right. A lot. Yeah, a lot of the men that I dealt with are more or less talking about some of the same talking points that we talk about in this space. The lack of support, the lack of cooperation. Some have been complicit in infidelity. Like I had a man that was going through severe depression. Because, you know, his son had, you know, behavior issues and so his wife couldn't deal with it, so she just left him. And so, you know, he was ruminating about, oh, I love my wife and whatever, but I try to tell him, I said, man, listen, you know, there's an old saying that says you can love women or you can understand them, but you can't do both. So I'd rather understand them instead of love them, because if I understand them, I don't take it personal when they do things that are unsavory. You can love them once you understand them, but you can't love them until you understand them. So I'd rather understand them first. And then when they do things that could break my heart, I ain't worried about it because I already got the game plan. I got the game book. And so, you know, and then some talk about how, they feel like a lot of times the women are constantly challenging their authority. So the few brothers I dealt with, is just a lack of cooperation, lack of support. Some was infidelity. And a lot of them just don't know how to more or less be the women that some of the men need them to be from the few brothers that came to me in practice.
So they don't know how to be the men that the women need them to be? That's what you said?
Yes, sir. Right.
All right. Lotus Scalper in the building with the super chat. Thank you very much for that. He says, question for the guest. How does social media affect the psyche? This is an issue, particularly in the black community. Right.
Well, listen, that's a good question, Lotus Scalper. Listen, advertisement makes millions and billions of dollars. So advertisement, or also the social media impacts a lot of our people, because just like I said earlier, there's a such thing called nature, which is internal, right, or intrinsic, but also, I mean, nature, but then also nurture. So nurture is the socialization. And so if you go back to the 40s and 50s, we probably had TVs that only had 3 or 4 channels. People were less distracted. But now with social media, a lot of people are not only distracted, but many people have more or less bought into the illusion that a lot of the things they see on social media is actually real. Many people more or less live behind avatars, right? They live behind those avatars, And so what people think they see, and what they think they see in front of the avatar is really reality, but it's not reality. It's just an illusion. So people buy into the illusion and they become victims of the illusion. Just like a lot of times, Bernard, you know it. When women see, their girlfriends going on trips, a lot of times what you see on social media is it's an illusion. It's not real. We call it fake. It's fake book. It's not real. And so they think they got to do it. And so that actually leads to
fake book.
Fake book, right. and that leads to, Bernard, depression, anxiety, sometimes narcissistic traits of entitlement. And it places men and women in predicaments that many people can't live up to. So yeah, social media plays a major role on the psyche, if that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Lotus Scalper, good question. Let's get back to where was that? Now, do you see it as even possible of it becoming more men in that field? Because I don't know if men just view that as, not necessarily a masculine profession. I don't know what it is, but
right.
I mean, there's clearly men who got the intelligence to get it done, to get into that field, but they don't do it. And so that causes men to be, I believe, underserved when it comes to that. So
right. That's answering the question. So therapists, especially clinical social work, Bernard, is seen as a pink collar profession, right?
Yeah.
It's not seen as a blue collar. So if you think about therapy is tied to nurturing. It's tied to nurturing and healing. So women by nature are nurturers. So they tend to gravitate to that field because they want to heal. But here's the issue: many don't understand how men think. So some tend to try to understand men through the mind of a woman instead of understanding men through the mind of masculinity. And that's why a lot of times when men go to therapy, Bernard, with their wives, they feel like the therapist beat them up because most of them are trained in liberal thought, and they don't assist the man through a neutral and fair communication. And there are some therapists that do it, but many feel like therapists are a waste of time when they go, because a lot of times they don't have masculine men, because they are male therapists, but a lot of them are not masculine. Many of them are liberal, and some of them, right? They're liberal and effeminate, Bernard. No disrespect, nobody that is effeminate, but the guys just feel like it doesn't benefit them, so they don't go. But when they find a masculine man that's, I'm 6'5", 6'6", with shoes on, and can spit that hot fire, man, they get encouraged because it's like, wow, because I'm rare. I'm extremely rare. Not only rare in this space, but also rare in my actual profession. So they want male therapists, but a lot of times they can't find them, or they feel like the therapists they go to a lot of times don't address their issues, unfortunately. So.
Man, good stuff. Shout out to Clue. He says, salute BR and culture. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Clue. Appreciate it. Appreciate the super chat. Man, no, it's good stuff here. Because one thing about this red pill space, comparing it or just looking at it, in reference to what it is that you do,
right?
It's almost like, men are underserved to the point to where they're not getting what they need from that field, because like you said, it's dominated first by white women, then black women.
Right.
Then I think you said next is probably white men and LGBTQ or something.
Right.
Some variation of that.
Right.
Yeah, people have came to this space, this red pill space, and they found people who are not qualified to do it. Are not credentialed, so to speak.
Right.
And they're looking to us, uncredentialed people, to help them. So, man, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that this space, somebody's in this space. I mean, there's a few others that are qualified to bridge the gap, because there's there's people who've reached out to me to I've had behind the scenes conversations with people, and I'm like, hey, you might be talking to the wrong person. I'll talk to you. Don't get it wrong. I will talk to any brother that reach out that want to talk to me.
Right.
But so yeah, I'm definitely glad that you're here. That if somebody needs some actual serious help, you're here for the job, man. So that's definitely a good thing. You had mentioned, I forgot exactly how you worded, and it's probably the last thing we'll talk about before we open it up because Kevin and Sales want to come up here and ask you some questions and show off his shiny suit that he had on earlier. He want to show off his shiny suit. So we're gonna open it up in a little bit. But those 7 things that you mentioned, those 7 steps, I forgot exactly how you worded it. I scribbled it down in my notes.
Okay.
But you know what I'm talking about. We're gonna.
Yes, sir.
I want to spend time and break down each one of them.
Right.
Each one of them. So let's do that, and then we'll open it up a little bit.
Right. So there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized. Optimized meaning he's working at peak proficiency, right? So the pillar or the epigenesis to society, Bernard, and the audience is family. Everything starts with family. You know, charity begins at home and goes abroad. Our families are broken, so it starts with family and understanding the importance of family because human beings are social creatures. That's one. The second one is critical, is female psychology. Once you understand female nature and female psychology, a lot of the things that you're struggling with will become eradicated. A woman can be your vice or a woman can be your virtue. It just depends on if you understand it. Like I said earlier, you can either love her or you can understand her, but you can't do both. If you understand her, then you can love her on the back end. But if you love her up front, then you will become sabotaged. So the next one is faith, because faith is essential to the healing of the mind. And then finances. Men need to understand the importance of finances. If you think about most black families were not taught, and some white families too, about the importance of finance and financial management. You know, the gospel said that money is the answer to all things, but the love of money is the root of all evil. So once you get past those top 4, then you go to world travel. Many men don't understand the importance that they can get the women that they want through world travel. The women that are traditional, feminine, and fit, and cooperative. I just came back from Brazil recently. I'm going to be in the movie Frustrated 3. Go check out my man Al Grease. Al Grease is a stellar brother. Yeah, Al Grease. Yeah, I was down in Brazil filming, Bernard, back in May with the BMO brothers. Shout out to Eric Spencer and the crew and my man Chris Strongheart. And, you know, I was in the movie Frustrated 3, and it talks about why men are frustrated. So, if men, once they get outside the contextual framework of America, once you travel abroad, man, you'll see that there are women that meet your criteria. Now, listen, women are women wherever you go. Women are universally the same wherever you go. But when you travel abroad, you see a different kind of woman that gives you greater odds of getting the kind of outcomes that you want. There are some decent sisters here and decent women in America. I'm not saying that they're not. But unfortunately, Bernard, a lot of our women have not been trained to be wise, or many are not wife ready. And because they've been indoctrinated, Bernard, by liberal feminist ideologies, they repel traditional things. As I've said in the past, a lot of our women were compromised. And also I've said, Bernard, that men and women, black men and black women, were the muse of society. So world travel is the next one. And then the next one, Bernard, is understanding politics. Politics play a major role in either empowering us or destroying us. I just did a show recently about the Haitian immigrants and how, you know, the Haitian immigrants and a lot of times the reflection of how black men see themselves, how the Haitians were treated as less than. So when you see those kind of negative images in the media, that can impact your psyche. And then the last step, Bernard, is male physical health, which is nutrition and fitness, but also male mental health. And once you can more or less utilize all those 7 core elements, you become optimized. It ain't nothing in the world that can stop you. And so once you get those 7 principles, you become kosher, and therefore you become righteous, and therefore you can be ready to conquer the world.
Right on, man. Good stuff. I'm loving it. DC, Dallas Cowboy fan in the building with the super sticker. Appreciate you with the $5 super sticker. And also, where's my man? Coach Ali's Corner. He says, we need this conversation more often. Notice how the viewership is lower. We don't worry about that. We ain't tripping on that. He says, when you're discussing actual issues, we love dysfunction, sadly enough. I've been in therapy for 6 months, and it was the best idea ever. Great topic. Hey, shout out to you. And you know what's big about him saying that? I view him as a brother who got it together. You know, this is a successful brother, got a great career, got a great family. You know, he got it going on.
Right.
But he still went and got some therapy to make sure that he's good, to make sure he get a clean bill of mental health. And that's huge. We always think we only need therapy when And when we down, we in the toilet. We at the ground floor. The toilet is flush. We in the sewer. That's when we think we need some therapy. But
no, you're correct. You're correct. Unfortunately, salaciousness sells. Things that are salacious actually sell. In this space, you got to have a little bit of drama and garbage in order to get a big audience. But the things that are pertinent to the soul or pertinent to the mind, a lot of times people tend to minimize or eradicate. So, unfortunately, the leader Turner, him and I, we talked about it when he was trying to talk about male empowerment. Folks didn't care about that. But when you start talking about celebrity news and gossip, then your numbers go up. So
but like he said on his show, and actually, I mean, me and him actually we've talked about that, but the way he worded it is really good. He said you got to use those things as a Trojan horse to talk about the things that that you really want to talk about.
Right? No, you're correct. You're correct. You got to know how to flex it. And I'm learning how to flex it. I call it in the South. We call it a streak of lean and a streak of fat. You got to have some lean meat mixed in with the fat, greasy meat. And that's how you get the kind of product that you want. Yeah,
people pick up their phone. They want to be entertained. It's hard to get around that. You're not just you're competing with everything that they could possibly be doing that day, that they possibly could be looking at on their phone. So I mean, you gotta play the game. Put it like that. You gotta
right. No doubt.
If the lead attorney want to talk to men about custody situations and child support and all of that, yes, use the that Fresh and Fit situation where he potentially, I don't believe the chick was pregnant, I think she was lying, but he potentially got some Instagram OnlyFans chick pregnant. He used that as a springboard to talk about what happens when you get some random chick pregnant, and he calculated the child support live on the air, and so he did it with like 5,000 people watching live. I think the video probably got 80,000 views. So he used that as a springboard, a Trojan horse, to talk about some things that matter. And
you're correct. Right, it's how you flex. You gotta know how to flex it, man.
That's how the game is played. KD in the building with the $20 super chat. Appreciate everybody dropping the 20 piece on it. Coach Ali and KD, appreciate you, gentlemen. Appreciate you, gentlemen. Before we pass the mic, y'all see RM got the link to the Coach and Clinician channel right there. Make sure you go ahead and hit that link. Make sure you subscribe to him. And especially if you need some help, I'm sure his information is right there where you could definitely reach out to the brother. He's doing the Lord's work out here. But without further ado, we're going to go to Mumia Obsidian Ali. Welcome to the show. Once again, you have the mic. Oh man, are you there?
Hey.
Oh, you just like you just made it.
It's a little rough here in Philly, so see if I'm trying to get through this. So 2 points. The first one is following up on what Coach Ali said. Why is it that Jordan Peterson can have a conversation and it doesn't have to have any Chitlin circuit stuff in it and still get a gazillion views? Why is that? And he's targeting a largely young white male audience. The jackass audience, the Beavis and Butthead audience. Why is that? Why is it that?
Can I answer that question, Obsidian?
Why is it that right here on YouTube we can see conversations being conducted by men for men at a high level with high engagement, but black people cannot. Black men cannot. Why is that? Why? Tell me why.
Go ahead, Kevin. I have my
Right. Well, you want me to answer? I will say
I'll start with you. You're the keynote.
Right. Well, I'll say that because Obsidian, we don't see it as being viable. We see therapy as stupid. We tend to like junk food instead of kosher food. Junk food is.
But I'm not talking about therapy. Although to be fair, Dr. Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist. To be fair, but I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about you pick the topic. You can find young white men now engaging at a high level of engagement. Lots of people pouring in to watch it. Why is it that black men, no matter what the age, we can't do it? Why is that?
Can I answer, Obsidian?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to be very blunt, Bernard. Thank you. I'm going to be very blunt, and it's nice to meet you, Obsidian. My name is Kevin Itself.
Yeah, I know who you are.
Black men aren't intellectual. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. I'm a member of plenty of other organizations. I have all types of degrees. I'm not trying to brag or anything like that. But even in my educated circle, it's even hard to engage in intellectual conversations, even amongst educated blacks. We're not into that. We're into debauchery. We are into drama. We are into anything that appeases us for the immediacy. You already know that, Obsidian. I understand why you're asking the question. For some reason, we aren't intellectuals. We listen on my channel. I talk about science fiction. I talk about mathematics. I talk about the universe. The numbers drop because black people aren't into that. Black people are into rap. Just like my dad said, give a black man some weed, some alcohol, some sex. He's good for the rest of the day. We're not into that. Not all black men, but outliers like us exist. But there is something that is cognitively, in my opinion, it's something that it's a cognitive thing. I've been around whites. I've been around Asians. I've been around Jews. They tend to be operating at a higher sense of, cognitive function, intellectualism. You can talk about mathematics. You can talk about science. You can talk about investing. They will sit there and have a good conversation with you. And if you want to talk about something silly, they'll talk about something silly. But for some reason, it's something in the black mind. I'm not a scientist by trade. My master's is in special education, mild moderate. But I've made shows about this. When I was a teacher in school, I talked about this, and people used to get mad at me. I've gotten fired from teaching jobs because I've flat out told parents about their students, about their children, and they just couldn't believe it. I said, your child does not need to be on Ritalin. Your child does not need to be on any medicine. Your child needs to eat good. You need to take away the TV. You need to take away the electronic devices. And you as the mother, you need to be a good mother and be like a tiger mom, like the Asian moms, and focus on mathematics, science, something hardcore. My own fraternity brother at a charter school fired me because I told a parent that one time. So I said, forget it, I'm done. And that was almost 10 years ago. So I've been, on my own, just trading stocks, doing my own businesses for years. We're not intellectuals, Obsidian. And if this hurts anybody's feelings, I really don't care from the bottom of my heart. But it's the truth. We are just not. Now, of course, you do have very smart blacks. You have very intellectual blacks. But generally, black men just care about one or two things. And that's just the honest to God truth. Sorry for going off on a tangent, Bernard. You know how I get.
Oh, no, you're all right. You're all right. So,
I'd love to hear what the cultural connection has to say about it.
Well, I think, to say what my man, what's your name, Kevin Itself said, I was a special ed teacher just like yourself.
Oh, okay.
But I would say to more or less more or less address what Obsidian is saying. I think it's the value system. If you don't value intellectualism, then you're not going to more or less, utilize it. There's an old saying that says, if you want to more or less keep a black man ignorant, don't give him a book because we don't read. We don't see the benefits of reading. So it all goes back to values, right? And that value system could be more or less theorized to go back to the times in slavery when a lot of black folks didn't see reading as being important. That's a theory. I'm not saying that's 100%, but it could be theorized. But it's just a value system. Now, there are Africans that are not, there are blacks that are not of the American extract, but from the diaspora, like Nigerians and others that value the kind of information that we're bringing. But unfortunately, in the black community, man, we just don't value it, man. So you have to be very creative.
So that raises a question, Kosher Clinician.
Right.
As you rightly pointed out, we can't say this is a black thing because how do you explain black folks from Africa? How do you explain black folks from Caribbean? So we have to cancel that out.
Right.
John Ogbu, who's now deceased. He's been deceased.
Well, I got a real quick question on that. When you say we can't cancel out black people from other cultures,
I said we have to cancel them out.
I mean, okay, so when you say we have to cancel them out because they're operating different than us, I've always asked this question. But are they really, or are we looking at those that come over here with, shout out to Ike, where he says, who come over here with the immigrant mentality, where you're coming to some place to excel and dominate because it's more opportunity. But does the average of them, function at that higher level?
I would say compared to blacks, yes. And how do we know that's true? Because when they get half a chance at grabbing education, which you have to pay for over there, it's not free. They're clamoring for it.
Yeah, though I think those that have the ability or the intelligence clamor for it. But if they all had that mentality,
well, you're asking if that's something of the rank and file, and I'm answering your question. The answer is yes. Compared to blacks, the answer is yes.
Then why do those African or predominantly black countries, why aren't they overall doing better if the average of them have that go-getter
that's easy.
attitude?
Because they got strongman societies. It's rife with corruption. This has been well documented. I can't remember the sister's name. She is from, I want to say Nigeria, but she's definitely from Africa. Used to work for Goldman Sachs. She's written several books about this. I can't remember her name right now. Please forgive me. But if you did a Google search on it, you'd find her. She's talked about this. The main reason why a lot of black folks over in Africa want what we got. That's the reason why those who can get over here do. They want a free, liberal, consent society like ours, where you can reap all the benefits therefrom. They're not able to do it because they don't have the money. They ain't able to go up against a strongman government, and the corruption is rife.
Now, Obsidian.
What it typically takes for them to get over here, and I had this conversation with somebody who was from over there. He said, basically, if your family does not have a lot of money, the amount of money that you have to save up to get over here, it amounts to somewhere in the area of 200,000. Let's say if you're coming from Kenya, 200,000 Kenyan shillings. Okay, you basically have to save up, essentially will be $200,000. And an African born and raised in Kenya who could save that much money, make that much money, save that much money to make it over here is an exceptional Kenyan. He's not the average of Kenyans. That's why I push back on the notion that all of them. I
never said all of them. I never said all of them.
Okay, that's the majority or the rank and file.
Being of Nigerian descent, and I gotta disagree with Obsidian respectfully. You have 300 million Nigerians. You only have about 25 million black people in America that are adults. Obviously,
they pack 300 million people in that
it's
little
300 million Nigerians.
That's a lot of people for that.
Every one in three Africans you will meet is a Nigerian. There's about 1.5 billion Nigerians. Africans. Now I gotta disagree with Obsidian. I see where he's coming from, and again, I could be wrong, but what you are encountering as Americans, you are encountering the intelligent Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians aren't intelligent like that.
Well, actually, you're encountering the privileged Nigerians. If what Bernard just saying, what happens in Kenya, because you have to be pretty privileged to get 200 grand to travel.
Right, because here goes the thing:
you either have to be privileged, or you have got to be a hard-working, driven, intelligent, purposeful.
300 million, Jack. 300 million, not billion.
No, it takes roughly 200,000 Kenyan shillings to make enough to be enough to translate it to American dollars and have enough to get over here. So what I'm saying is you have to be an exceptional Kenyan, or come from some privileged family. So I do think that they got probably a lot of the same problems that we have. It was let's take your point. I'm gonna throw it back to you because you're going down a rabbit hole. I think so. I do want you to finish down the rabbit hole, but I just think with Africans, I think that they are. We're looking at the best of them.
All right,
let's go down the rabbit hole.
So let's go to the best of us. I mentioned John Agbu, who was Nigerian. He came to the United States, scholar. Some years back, he did a very controversial study focused on black, middle, and upper middle class folks in Shaker Heights, Ohio. All right?
I'm from Cleveland Heights, by the way.
Okay.
Shaker Heights.
So
right
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And he studied the children of successful black folks in this basically the Prince George's County of the Midwest. And he found some very interesting results. He found that the children of these very successful parents who oftentimes went to private schools, their performance was the same as kids going to the west side of Baltimore public schools. It was the same thing. Why? See, I think what's going on here is this. This is what I think is going on here. I think a lot of blacks are holding on to what Agbu called oppositional culture. I think we're holding on to things that in the past, that is to say, in the mid to earlier part of the 20th century, Jim Crow and all that entailed, had some utility and some use. For example, you would be suspicious of the white man's science. Why? Because the white man's science did us wrong. That there is truth to that.
Yeah.
So you would be very inherently suspicious of it. But that was back then. It's not today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, what happened to black men with the Tuskegee experiment was horrible. No doubt about it. But black men to this day use that as a pretext not to get a vaccine that can save their life. You see, a lot of black folks hold on to what happened in the past, which did have some, legitimacy. We're not making it up, but it's outlived its usefulness. And as a matter of fact, it's now hurting us. This is the reason why we have an anti-intellectual strain, which in part translates in an American society, because intelligence and prosperity do tend to be strongly correlated here. It translates into those, and Thomas Sowell talked about this in Black Rednecks, White Liberals, how we don't see the successful black as an authentic black. He's somehow, suspect in some kind of way. We don't want to listen to that. Everything about what we're doing goes against what the Western world is all about. The Enlightenment, the scientific method, understanding that life has both a foot in Jerusalem and Athens. It's both and. Blacks have roundly rejected it, and we're paying a huge price for it.
Yeah.
We don't valorize the blacks that have succeeded unless they succeed in entertainment. We don't. We see blacks getting clear success, and we still reject it, mock it. There's a reason for it. I just laid out what I think is part of it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, there's an old saying that says that, tough times make tough men and easy times make weak people, make weak men and women. I think that's, so look, there are a myriad of variables that more or less contextualizes the human condition that we have now. I think black people were compromised. I think you had a greater level of black folks where we were, quote unquote, caught up in the civil rights movement that were more or less not only more engaged, but they were more determined to be successful. But I think, unfortunately, I think that the civil rights movement, in my opinion, compromised a lot of, the Lyndon B. Johnson administration compromised a lot of progress that blacks were making. We became too content. It's almost like playing football. Once you get the state championship, you get content, so you stop fighting. And I think what Obsidian said does play a role. The victimhood plays a role in our pathology, which more or less has derailed us. But also a lot of our women have been compromised because they believe, in my opinion, some of the lies that were more or less indoctrinated by liberal white policies. So it's not a one-shoe-fit-all scenario. There are many factors. But I think the main thing is that, even though there were intellectual blacks that wanted to read, they knew that reading more or less gave them greater outcomes. Those people, those Africans in those countries, they want to be successful. They want to see what Americans are getting. They want the American dream. But I think a lot of our people have been easily pacified, and they just don't have the desire to work as hard, some, not all, as our ancestors did. I think our ancestors wanted the thirst for freedom better. But I think a lot of our people now, they just don't, they have been so indoctrinated, with some of the same things that some of our white predecessors are doing. They have not remembered the struggle of our ancestors. And so that's my opinion. That's my take on it.
I wanted to ask one other question.
Really quick, Obsidian. Solo Traveler in the building with the super chat. Appreciate that. He says the culture clinician preaching about world traveling. Yes, he did speak about that. Absolutely. And shout out to who we got here. Rob Mash. Is culture a psychotherapist or internal family system therapist?
Well, I'm more of a psychotherapist, but internal. But you know, there are different treatment modalities or models that are more or less inculcated into the therapeutic process. But I'm more of a psychotherapist. There's some psychoanalytic therapy, but you know, there are more specialized formulas. You know, like that are more or less tied into, you know, family therapy. Most counselors are family therapists, but I'm a clinical therapist, so my range is a lot broader. So my range is a lot broader. Most people that have degrees in counseling tend to focus more on the family systems therapy for the most part.
All right. Snuggles in the building with the super chat says, the young man just explained how slavery was easily dealt with to sell your own, not understanding the ramifications because the lack of foresight. Who is she referring to? Snuggles, you did it again. Okay. Come on, Snuggles. I think she watching two shows at one time. I think she super chatted the wrong show. That was somebody else's show she meant to drop that super chat on. Nobody mentioned slavery. Jeez. Come on, Snuggles. Get with us. Get with us. All right. Equal opportunity options in the building says black folks need shiny things and curvy shapes to engage. Let's be honest. Kevin is right. I mean, it's truth. It's truth to that. But okay, well, let me just. I want to pass it back to Obsidian because I like when Obsidian takes us down a rabbit hole. But so I don't want to veer off the path. But well, there's people like Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, and yes, they are animated. They are animated, and in their own way, they do play that same game with their animation. But nobody would argue that those men are not intelligent. Not intelligent, and black people show up in great numbers to listen to them when they speak. So
have you ever seen Michael Eric Dyson and Dr. Jordan Peterson at the same time talking to each other?
Unfortunately, yeah. When he called Jordan Peterson, he resorted to calling Jordan Peterson, what did he call him, an angry white man?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He made an utter fool of himself.
I was disappointed.
See, the black brain trust, if we can call it that, in Black America, is devoted to one thing and one thing only: how bad the white man's been to us.
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. No other problem can be seen in any other way. It has to be reducible to how bad the white man did us.
Yes, and Michael Eric Dyson and Cornel West and other black intellectuals, they play that game, but and that's how they lure black people in to hear the intellectual discussion. They gotta put the evil white man in the backdrop.
Bernard, can I say this real quick?
Really quick. But
Cornell is a fraternity brother of mine. Respect. But Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson, I've always said this, I've been saying this for the past 20 years. They sound smart to dumb. I mean, they sound smart to dumb people. Man. No. Hear me out. When we talk about intelligent black men, how come Neil deGrasse Tyson, his name is never mentioned?
The reason I didn't mention him is
James Gates. When we talk about scientists, people who have logical brains, people who are really intelligent, some Negro. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. The reason I didn't mention him, because that's Neil deGrasse Tyson if he's the one, you know, that they say who's the one person that if you could have dinner with any one person on earth, Neil deGrasse Tyson is my one person I would have dinner with.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't mention him is because the majority of his audience are not black. So I tried to find black intellectuals where the majority of their audience is black. So I couldn't pull out Thomas Sowell. It was so many others I couldn't name. So I had to find who I could. And Obsidian and you and Obsidian made a good point that on stage with Jordan Peterson, he didn't seem nowhere near as smart. So there's that.
Because he's not.
Okay,
and that's what it is. Michael Eric Dyson is, I mean, he's smart in African studies, but he's not really overall. He's not. And right. These people are so dangerous to the black community. And I've been saying this for years. I have a bachelor's degree also in African studies. I used to get chased out of class for saying stuff like this. They're not. These people are really a detriment to our culture. Go ahead. All right, go ahead, Obsidian. You had a second question you were trying to answer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So to the notion that you can either love or understand women, but not both. I'm curious. What other culture on planet Earth has that maxim?
I would say white manosphere.
I would say all men have that maxim to some degree, more or less. I think that goes back to ancient science and also the esoteric. I think every man should. Let me finish. I think every man should understand that maxim. It's not more or less just predicated to black men. See, we tend to get caught up in this what I call cacophony of thinking. We tend to juxtapose or more or less assume that black men are only concerned about women, but that's a fallacy. All men are more or less can be victims of the human condition. It goes way back to the esoteric, goes back to biblical and ancient texts. So I don't think it's just a black man issue. I think it's a man issue. And but I think a lot of times black men become victims of their own peril because they do not adequately understand female psychology, in my opinion.
It's interesting. I've been in the white manosphere for many years.
Right.
And I have never heard any of its movers and shakers or even the rank and file say something like that.
Yep.
Really?
Never.
Yep. Totally agree with Obsidian. Yep.
See, this is what I think is going on.
Right.
What I think, and this is an extension of what I just talked about. See, black folks are in a very interesting schizophrenic dilemma here. See, on the one side, we want to be included in the American family. We want to suck from all that comes from American largesse. But on the other side, we still want to retain the right to be ambivalent about it, to be highly critical of it, to be downright mean-spirited to it in a righteous, indignant sort of way. We have to figure out what is it that we want and what rules do we want to play by. So when it comes to dealings with black women, see, black women want certain special types of rules. They don't want to have to operate under the same rules that the Mexican woman, the Afghan woman, the Chinese woman just coming fresh off the boat. They don't want to operate under those rules. They want to operate under their own rules. Okay, then. So we're going to operate under the own rules, then we can do that. But then you can't be mad then when the rules come back and bite you. So then they want to change it back to the white man's rules. So which one is it, ladies? Do you want your own rules, your own black rules, where black men have to play by that game or not? Which is it? Which is it? Make a decision. Because see, you don't want to play by the white woman's rules when it comes to a beauty standard. We already got that. But at the same time, you don't want to state exactly what that black beauty standard is. You want the color around by when it suits you, and then you want to be able to go fly by wire when it suits you. Which one is it? If you want black men to understand you before they love you, okay, fine. So what are the implications and the ramifications of that? Let's lay it out. Then black women go right back around and go back to the white man. What do black women do when things go bad with the black man? They go run right to the white man. Call 911 on you. So which is it? Do you want your own sovereign nation or not?
Well, see, I'm talking about understanding, not to be servile to a woman. I'm not saying it from a point of servitude, but I'm just talking about understanding how a lot of their machinations more or less can be a peril to any man. I'm not coming from a context of being a servant. I'm just coming in from a context of empowerment. So I don't talk of it, no different than Rollo Tomasi. I don't talk about it from a context of, you got to understand them to give them what they want. I'm not saying that. I think black men should be on their purpose. I'm talking from a position of understanding how they use trickery a lot of times, similar to what you're talking about, to get their fickle whims or get their whims taken care of. So I think when men understand them, they don't become victims of their own peril.
And at that point, you talked about the esoterics and whatnot. At that point, I get straight Aristotle on them. Right. I want Athena. I want a sister that looks great but thinks like a man. Meaning you're mature, meaning that you take responsibility for your life and what you've done with yourself, meaning that you're accountable to something or someone bigger than yourself. I don't want to deal with the functional equivalent of a child.
All right. Well, before I get to, let me get to the super chats. Black Sword in the building. Black Sword 404 says, why aren't black people into intellectual things? The culture doesn't support it. There's no payoff. You have to consciously change it. Yeah. Clue in the building with the super chat. He says, Dyson will mix the Pythagorean. I was gonna get it. I was gonna get it. I was going to get it.
He said with Tupac lyrics. The
Pythagorean theorem: a squared plus b squared
Oh,
equals.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
squared plus b squared equals c squared. See, I know what the Pythagorean theorem is, so I know I can read it when I see it. So hey, don't
Intelligence is based on accomplishments and productivity. That's all I wanted to say. And Dyson, I'm sorry.
Mix it with Tupac lyrics, and people will call him genius. He only does this to black audiences. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Yeah, Obsidian said a lot there. I'm almost at a loss at this juncture. Well, I'd say Freedman's Journal. If you're there, you got a question for the kosher clinician, or while we wait on him to unmute up, Kevin, you got a question or something you could throw out there? Or let's go to Freedman's Journal. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to shout out to Obsidian for bringing that up. That is one of the things that is killing us is anti-white culture. I mean, just the way people who would otherwise succeed are hanging on to that. You know, I tell people about it. I had a friend of mine that said they wanted to buy a house, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. And there was a neighborhood in Atlanta that they were specifically giving out grants for. And he drove me to it. He said, oh, we can get here. But then there were a couple of white families that had moved in and gentrified a home. And he just bypassed it by and went to Africa. Well, went to someplace else to teach, basically. So it's just like, this guy could have had 200 grand in free equity. But being anti-white was more important than making a good financial decision. So it's just like, we cannot be defined by that. You achieve and you succeed, and get off this foolishness of that's a white thing, because now they're using that to control you. Now you see people from the left saying, hey, being on time is a white standard. Don't do that. You know, using it against you. It's crazy. So, yeah, that's what I had to say.
You said you've actually heard somebody say being on time is a white standard? I haven't heard nobody say that. No, white people,
Yes.
white people, hold on. White people are more timely, yes, but I've never heard somebody try to argue that I've never heard nobody try to argue it from that standpoint.
Oh, yes.
It's an observation, but I never heard nobody try to argue it. That's a white thing.
That's a thing. I mean, they're even getting rid of advanced classes in public school, right? Getting rid of advanced classes in public school. I mean, that's one of the few areas where, if a black kid got good enough test scores, they could get into a good educational track. They just want to take that away as well. It's crazy.
Freeman, can I say something to you real quick? When I was teaching in high school, I taught at Jane Addams Business Career Center, and I taught at many other high schools in Cleveland. And I taught at charter schools. I was giving out homework. They told me not to do it. The kids were complaining. And the homework wasn't even anything damn elaborate other than a damn worksheet. At a charter school I was at that my fraternity brother ran, he actually fired me. Fired me because I was trying to set a high standard. I was teaching the kids chess. I started an engineering club. He said I was doing too much with the kids. The kids were complaining about homework. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, SKC with the super chat says Black America hate the standards of society. They want no responsibility to society while begging for society to bend to its contradictory views. I was about to throw it to you Coach Clinician. What? Somebody got something ringing.
Hold tight. Might be my phone.
Yes, sir. That was.
Yeah, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Oh no. The comment on the super chat, I was passing that to you just to give you your thoughts on that. What do you think about with SKC?
Yeah, I think there's an element of truth to it. I think unfortunately some of our people have been more or less victims of the victim Olympics. And I saw when I taught school, I think as I said earlier, tough times make tough men, but easy time make weak men. And I think we've been compromised. I think black people internally have strong work ethics, but fathers give boys instruction, order, and discipline. And when you got a damn near over 70% of children being born in single parent homes without fathers, that actually leads to the pathology. Also, when you have women that are violent, that don't want to more or less cooperate with their men, it makes the predicament a lot harder. You know, when black men got to fight in their homes for power, just like they got to fight outside of their homes for power, and their authority is constantly being undermined, then how can your child be successful? Fathers give boys balance, they give them order, and they give them structure, and they give them purpose. But I think what the person said earlier, you know, I think we do hate the standards. We would rather more or less lived in a victim mind state that's more or less predicated by white standards, making the white man God, instead of using the talents that God gave us and superseding those outcomes. As I said earlier, we have been victimized, our ancestors, but you don't have to remain victims. You have to overcome that and come up with viable solutions to be better, not only for yourself, but also for your community, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Obsidian, what's your thoughts on, well, I think I kind of know what your views are, as far as what SKC wrote right there, or what culture clinician said in response to it. You got anything on that?
Yeah. We're pretty much shoulder to shoulder. And I think that I think we've reached a kind of inflection point on a more macro level. I think we've reached a point. It's getting harder and harder for us to make the racism argument stick as we continue to move through the 20th century, for the simple reason that we got people coming from all over the world who are not white, don't identify as white, and are just zipping right by us on any life measure you want to name: education, earnings, family formation, home ownership, business ownership, political engagement. I mean, you know, name it, and they're just zipping right by us. I mean, the tensions between ADOS blacks, if you will, and African and Caribbean blacks is well documented. For example, the same black folks that was, you know, whinging and whining about affirmative action, Caribbean and African blacks go right through and zip right through, and so on and so forth. I mean, even right now, we look at the big businesses in Black America. The single biggest black website for black men is World Star Hip Hop. That's a fact. There is no other black male website founded by black men for black men that's bigger than World Star Hip Hop. And it was founded by a Haitian. Madame Noir was founded by a brother. I don't know if he's a Haitian or not, but he's definitely not ADOS. And a list, and I think he owns some other stuff too, Bossip, I believe, and some other properties aimed at, let's just be honest here, mostly ADOS black women. And the list goes on. These are young black folk, young black people. They just happen to not be born and raised in the United States, or if they were, their parents are immigrants. So, I mean, as we move through the 21st century, it's going to get harder and harder for ADOS black folks to make the racism argument stick, because we got way too many black folks who are just straight up outperforming us. Name the area of endeavor, they got us by a country mile.
Oh man!
And for those out there that want to criticize World Star Hip Hop, hey, listen, I'm with you. The problem is ADOS black men didn't create something better. And every time we had a chance to support something better, we didn't. And ADOS black men are over there in droves supporting it. So you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, I think you're right, Obsidian. I think the time for the wheat to separate itself from the shaft is here. I mean, it's here. It's just going to happen, especially as winter cometh. You know, that theme. If you aren't up on game, you aren't looking at the future. I mean, a lot of black people are going to be left behind looking at World Star Hip Hop. You know, the people who are looking ahead, black people looking ahead, are going to be the ones with the resources and the wives and this, that, and the other. And everyone else is going to be scrambling. So I think you're right on that.
Well, you know, that's more or less manifest now. You know, look at this panel of intellectual brothers. You know, Bernard should be having at least 500 people in this panel. I mean, in viewing this show. But we don't value the things that are central to our core that can help us be better. We tend to more or less value, you know, things that lack substance. And I think you are seeing that pathology now. I think you're seeing it now. I think it's gotten worse and worse, and I don't think it's going to dissipate until there's a total de-evolution. of the current fabric that we're dealing with right now. So, art imitates life by looking at the numbers, man.
How does a de-evolution happen with a culture, society, or group of people? How does that happen? I go to you on that one, Coach Clinician. Go ahead, Kevin. I see you chomping at the bit to get to it, but
well. Listen, this is my own opinion. Some might disagree. I think black men need to divest, start to focus on themselves, their own best interests, and get with women that are cooperative and women that understand them. Those women don't more or less have to be within the contextual framework of the United States. They can be foreign black women. So they need to divest and focus on themselves first. First, you hold a standard. If they do not adhere to that standard, then you divest or totally divest, and then you build yourself up, and then you more or less get with women that are more or less going to follow your program and your expectations. And that's my point of view, because there are women from other countries that are more or less akin to that. Women are universally the same wherever you go, but there are women from other countries that are more or less cultivated to more or less meet your expectations. But you got to start with the internal first, in my opinion.
Casual observer in the building. He says, black people are victims and self-victimizers. Both are true. United Fitness says, even though I couldn't get on the panel with my bike. LOL. Oh, sure, I'm not letting you come up so everybody can watch you exercise. That's weird. I don't know. I saw somebody let you do that. That was weird.
Yeah. That's my homie. He came on my channel a couple times. Shout out
I know. That's weird to me. You ain't about to come up on your exercise bike. I don't want to, come up, sit down, and join the conversation. I want to see you do push-ups or whatever you be trying to do. But anyway, what was the question that was put out there? The cultural. No, you said something about a cultural de-evolution. And you were explaining, you was explaining what you thought. Kevin, you were trying to jump in and give your thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Guys, you're gonna be mad at what I'm gonna say, but I wrote papers on this 20 years ago when I was in college. I have many degrees. When I was on my African Studies degree, I wrote a paper on this. There is no de-evolution. There was no de-evolution. This has been going back thousands of years within the African race. I'm gonna give you an example of one black man, and he is the causation of the encroachment into Africa by the goddamn Arabs, Mansa Musa. This isn't me talking, this is history. The Negro was so enthralled within himself, he took an entourage to show off all the gold that was in Mali, which at the time was the Mali Empire. What this Negro did was just give me a second. What he did was he went into Egypt. He showed them all this gold of what they had, even destabilizing their economy. You know what the Arabs did? They came in and they conquered all of North Africa because of this one black man. Now, hear me out for a minute. I think that we need to acknowledge that we as a people, we didn't usher in the computer age. We didn't usher in the industrial age. We didn't usher in a lot of different ages right now. If we acknowledge that and we had the mindset, you know what, we're going to be a superior race in the future because civilization 1 is coming. If anybody is familiar with the Cardoff, I can't think of the damn name, but there's a scale of civilization. If we are going to be the superior race, I think we need to acknowledge that instead of pretending like we had all these ancient empires, which we didn't. We need to stop pretending that we were a unified race, which we weren't, because to this day, there's thousands of tribes in Africa now with thousands of different languages. There was no de-evolution, Bernard, and I know this is going to offend a lot of people who have who reimagined the goddamn past. But if we acknowledge it, I think that we can be the superior race by saying, you know what, going forward, we're going to do everything that makes a race superior. We're gonna learn all the fucking stems. We're going to understand import exports. We're going to understand. Think about this. There's no African nation that makes their own gun. Think about how crazy that is. There's no African nation that makes their own damn artillery. Just think about how crazy that is. There's 56 African countries. There's about 15 African islands. There's black South American countries, Guyana, and nobody's ever said, you know what, let's make our own shit. That's what we need to do. There has been no de-evolution. We've been like this for a very long time, and I'm tired of it.
Well,
sorry,
Africa has a serious brain drain problem because like all their best and brightest come over here.
Nigeria, yeah.
Their best and brightest come over here. That's why.
Now I will admit the Nigerians have produced their own vehicle. I will admit that within the past 10 years they have streamlined and they've made their own vehicle. I will admit that. I can't think of the name of it, and they're trying to get it into mass production. But other than that, we need to think in terms of the future, like other races of people do. Sorry to go off like that. You know how I black out sometimes, Bernard. I love being black. I'm just telling the goddamn truth. If you suck, you suck. I'm sorry. If a coach says, "Hey, nigga, you suck," you suck. And you say, "This is what you can do to be better." This is what I look in the mirror some days and say, "Kevin Sells, you suck. This is what you need to do to be better." And that's what black people need to do to be better. We need to understand how computers work, I'm talking about cars in terms of building a car, like other groups of people have done, which the Nigerians are doing.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Africa is the home of 1/3 of all the languages on Earth, very segmented.
It's crazy. 1/3 of the languages. The Tower of Babel. Negroes couldn't even get along 1,000 years ago. They lived no more than 2 miles from each other, couldn't even communicate with each other. The white man went in there and said, "Oh, this is going to be easy conquering them." They're stupid. White man has one language. Well, not one, but under the Latin language. How many languages come under that? Sorry. 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 Go ahead.
Obsidian, you want to add anything there? But oh man.
See, the thing is, brothers just don't have a chance to get it out, right? So when we get on panels like this, it's like, I gotta get it all out right now. Like, no, we got time.
Yeah. Kevin, you be cracking me up. But no, it was an interesting thing put out there. I forgot exactly how it was worded. It said something about reversing the de-evolution. Coach Clinician, you did mention one thing that and some people have given pushback to that. Some of the pushback is not legitimate. When you talk about reversing, the problems, why would you say it starts with? I mean, obviously you shouldn't get with bad women like that. That's potentially a separate conversation. If you're looking at the problems with black men and what's going on with problems with black men, like one could argue, and I don't even know if I would make this point, but let's just go down this rabbit hole of getting with women from other cultures. How does that fix us? So
well, listen, men at the internal hard drive craze for feminine women. It's part of our genetic makeup. And so when I say the evolution, what I'm saying, it got to start with men. I'm not talking about some global mass de-evolution based on I don't know, at the micro level. I'm talking about at the individual level. Black men must look at themselves and know that they have some inherent worth. Listen, why do you think black men are so broken? We don't build black men. We don't build black boys. We got black girls magic, black girls rock. But who's building black boys? Where's Black Boys Rise? Maybe I need to come up with a brand called Black Boys Rise. Black boys have learned to see themselves as subjugates of many women instead of seeing themselves as someone that has an inherent worth and inherent value. So when I'm saying that there are cultures and ecosystems that more or less addresses the internal things that most men want, which is a feminine, cooperative woman. And what I'm saying that unfortunately, some women, not all, in our communities don't more or less aspire for that because they have been more or less been indoctrinated by liberal white policies that more or less see black men as the enemy instead of seeing black men as a companion that can help them build. So I'm saying to that man that more or less knows what his inherent worth is, he must de-evolution and more or less deconstruct that negative schema that he has in his mind about his lack of worth. And once he finds that worth, find women that match his drive and his value system. I don't have a problem with it. If men want to stay and date women in this country, that's fine. That's their right. But to the men that want to travel abroad and go to other countries where the women are more or less conditioned to be wives, because most women are not wife ready, then they have a right to go to those countries to more or less accentuate the things that they want in life. So I don't know why it's a problem when men say they want to travel abroad and find.
I don't. Yeah.
Right.
I
never understood that. I mean, I think
I've pushed back against people who push back against brothers traveling abroad and everything. But I do have questions sometimes when people make it seem like that's solving all the problems. Some people oversell it, but it is a tool you should have on the tool belt.
Yes, sir. I agree with that. I agree with that. It's not the panacea. It's definitely not the panacea.
Yeah.
But it is a viable option that many should use if that's what they want. Listen, only 5% of black folks got passports, so we know on whole many are not going to go. But to those men that have money and resources, and they say, listen, there's greater over yonder, I don't have a problem with it if they feel like they can't get what they want. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to get personal. I know you got a ring on your finger. You're married man, I presume?
Yes, sir. I've been married for over 25 years. My parents have been married for over 50. I come from a traditional black family. So I've been married for over 25 years. I'm one of the rare breeds, you know. Mom and dad are still married, you know.
Okay.
They've been married for a long period of time.
Did you meet your wife abroad?
No, I met my wife here, but, you know, I got married back in 1994. I'm an old head. You know, things were totally different in 94 than they are now, you know, and, you know, I'm from the South, you know. So, listen, I'm not saying that they're not here.
You got a Southern 80 sister then.
Yeah, I got a Southern 80 sister, right. I'm not saying that women are not here, but I'm saying they got to go through so many things, man. They got to go through so much to get to what they are looking for. Sometimes I go on Facebook and just challenge the query of some of our women, and their thinking is not more or less predicated on service and duty. They want men to serve them. But I believe in what the tenets of theology say, that the woman was made for the man. And by her being made for man, then if she serves him, then he will serve her. It's a symbiotic relationship. He will take care of her if she takes care of him. But many of our women, not all, don't want to come into the equation to serve. They want to come in to be served because they think cooking makes them a slave. And I'm saying if a man is expected to give his life at any point, then who's the slave? So there are other countries like my man Guap. You know, he came on your channel. Guap is my homie.
Oh, yeah.
His wife is from Colombia because Wife to Be is going to be from Colombia. Because those women are more or less trained like our women were years ago to serve their men. But our women got compromised by liberal, white, elitist policies that says that if you serve a man, it makes you a slave. But what women don't understand, to a good man, I'm not saying a bum, a Raekwon, a Shermike, or a man. I'm not talking about bummy, dusty dudes. I'm talking about righteous, good brothers that want to build with a good woman. And I think Obsidian said himself in some of his books, and in general, some of the greatest indictments between black men and black women, we don't get along. And what I'm saying as a black man, I would never tolerate it. Either you're going to conform or you can be by yourself. I'm not going to tolerate disrespect from no one, man or woman, but definitely not from the woman that I'm dealing with. And that's me.
Something that was brought up when, and Obsidian has talked about this a lot. I remember, he just recently was interviewed by Ike, and they had a real good discussion. And when it comes to the whole race thing, one thing that Obsidian points out that people, he's really the only one that I ever hear mentioning it, that the movements of the 60s and the early 70s, they actually worked, and we're free now to make our choices and do what we want to do. And part of the problems that we're having, we're grappling with that freedom, you know. All the racism of the past ultimately I hate to say it, but I mean I think Obsidian's onto something when he say that the racism of the past, the Jim Crow, all of that, it ultimately held us together to some degree. Even though things weren't perfect, it in many ways held us together. Now it's like the black men and black women are free, and now they're drifting further apart, and they want different things. What do you think about that, culture clinician? And I'll pass it back down to Kevin and Sales. I can tell you pull out your pen, you was writing something, you ready to go. So I'll throw it back to you. But I'll go to culture clinician.
So Bernard, I want you to clarify. So to more or less reframe what you're saying. So you're saying that we tend to more or less we'll rather mire in victimhood and hold on to the relics of the past instead of more or less seeing the inherent worth that we have as black people. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that too. I didn't say that, but that coincides with it very well, because we're not looking ahead, we're not looking further into the future. But also, in addition to that, not after all those movements and everything, basically did what they set out to do, and now we're free ultimately, and black men and black women seem to want different things and go in different directions, and we're not moving forward, looking into the future. We are staying back. We're staying back in the past, but we're separating further apart. It seems, black men and black women.
Well, I think that fragmentation or that chasm that you're seeing now between black men and black women a lot of times is due to the fragmentation that I said first starts with family. It all starts with the family, Bernard. If the family is right, then everything else will take care of itself. But how many women are teaching women like the elders used to do back in the old days how to be wives, how to treat their husbands right? And so, we live in a very individualistic culture. The millennials and the zennials tend to be more individualistic. Also, Bernard, they tend to have more or less narcissistic traits. Many of them have very narcissistic traits. And so I think because of that individualism and because of some of those narcissistic traits that a lot of our millennials and zennials have, it's coming with a great expense. So victimhood, the victim mindset, and also individualism has played a major role into the current decadence that we see right now in society. And so it takes the voice of reason to challenge that or to recalibrate that kind of negative thinking. But here's the issue though, Bernard, you've seen it. Anytime somebody challenges that negative thinking, it goes back to an acronym I created called DEAF. They deny, they become enraged, they accuse through ad hominem attacks, and they fight you or they flee because it's cognitive dissonance. And because of that cognitive dissonance, man, they're going to continue to go to what I call a psychic cacophony, where that ringing noises in their ear cannot be more or less cessated because they refuse to do the internal work. And so that introspection must come from within. Michael Jackson said it, as I said earlier, myself. I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. Until they do that introspection, then we're just going to be continuing to talk in circles, man, unfortunately, in my opinion.
All right. United Fitness says, come to Mexico with me, LOL. Shout out to you. Appreciate the super chats. Trader says, who in their right mind wants a ratchet strag just to stand in it? Who said get with a ratchet strag just to stand in it? Nobody said that, Trey. Nobody said that, Trey. All right. The Swoovie is in the building with a $20 super chat. Says, I agree with the panel. The only thing I would add is an exceptional margin of black men wasn't taught nor shown how to be productive emotionally, intellectually, or financially. Lack of guidance is our biggest hurdle. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Go ahead. You was chomping at the bit, Kevin and Sales. I'll pass the mic to you.
I'm gonna be offensive again. And from the bottom of my heart, if anybody is offended, I don't care. If the gun had been in Africa 400 years ago, they would have been doing drive-by shootings. But the oldest profession in the book is prostitution. Given to their own devices, women will sell their bodies for sex. It was like that 10,000 years ago. The only reason why they weren't doing it in certain time periods is because of the creation of marriage that men created to bind families in terms of business. Okay, now hear me out. I'm gonna answer your question. There's a Cajun restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not gonna give the name. He's an older black guy. Man, he said this about 5 or 6 years ago, and I hated him for like 2 minutes for it. He said it was better living in segregation when he was a kid.
Right.
For 2 minutes, I wanted to be like, I'm out of here. Fuck your food.
Right. I agree.
But I sat back and I said, wait a minute. He could be right.
Mm-hmm.
Hear me out for a minute. It was better in segregation. We had our own businesses. We had our own communities. Right. We didn't engage. Now, of course, not we, because I wasn't there, but we as black people back in that day. Of course, family structure was better back then. It had to be.
Right.
Black women, just like most women back then, couldn't run amok because it was a societal standard to be married. It just wasn't a black standard or white. It was a societal standard.
I agree with that.
But given to their own devices, black women will be ratchet in any time period if there are not social constraints.
I agree with that.
Now, I'm about to go down a rabbit hole real quick, Bernard, and give me about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys watch Star Trek, but try to follow me on this one. There is a law that the United Federation of, now you guys probably are thinking, like, what the hell is this dude talking about? But hear me out. There's a law. It's called in the United Federation of Planets. Now, Captain Kirk, they are a member of a military organization called Starfleet. They cannot break this law. If they go to a primitive culture, it's a law. It's called the Prime Directive. They are not to interact with a race of people who have not developed warp capability. It's almost punishable by death. In my opinion, certain white cultures, the Romans, the Greeks, for some reason, they were a little bit more advanced than other people. They went throughout the world conquering people and doing all types of things. I think what happened is that anytime you engage with a primitive culture, and I gotta admit it, our ancestors were primitive, because look at us right now. We lost. We're speaking English. We're speaking their goddamn language. So when you engage with the primitive people, you are basically disrupting the natural course. And I think what we continue to see is that disruption from the Europeans. I think that we should have been left alone to our own devices. Now, I will admit segregation was good, because segregation pretty much left us to our own devices, but it forced us into a condition where we had to be together, just like apartheid. So the South Africans were not as violent under apartheid, but given to their own devices, by nature, the South Africans are truly a violent race. They were like that 500 years ago. The white man went in there and said, "Oh, these people are crazy." So listen, I know I'm offensive. I know people, I know if they want to see me, they'll probably, fight me on spot. But the truth of the matter is that it was better back then. And maybe, just maybe, people should just be left to their own devices, in my opinion. Hopefully, I didn't get you off left. Go ahead.
O'Shea Duke Jackson in the building says the Black Manosphere is back. Shout out to the old man. Absolutely, 100%. Definitely glad to have the old man back, and always glad when O'Shea Duke Jackson come through and drop something on it. Shout out to O'Shea. Freeman's Journal, you wanted to piggyback on what Culture Clinician and Kevin himself said.
Yeah, there to the comment about black men not being taught. I think you had a comment like on your last show about black boys doing better when they see relationships with older black men within their community, even if they don't have fathers in the home. They still do better. Yeah. Right. So it's important for us to floss a little. Matter of fact, I think SKC made a comment about how do we co-opt like World Star. The brothers that are doing well gonna have to floss a little bit, I think. You can't be strictly intellectual all the time. There has to be some sort of entertainment value. We're gonna have to, like Anton Daniels does. I think that's why he gets a lot of hate, because he says, "I did it right and I'm rich. What you gonna do about it?" You gotta say, "Hey, I do live in a great neighborhood. I did do these things, and this is what it looks like on the other side." You don't have to do all this foolishness. There's another choice. And that was great for me as a child. When I was able to see the world beyond the four walls of the ghetto I lived in, it was like a whole new world. Like, oh, this exists. Oh, okay. I had some perspective. So to that, I think, I think we're going to have to floss a little bit. Good brother's going to have to floss. It's just how it is.
I agree with that.
Panel question: will Greater Black America culture eventually completely erode traditional black families? Culture Clinician family structure is viewed as too restrictive to black culture. What's your thoughts on that one? Throwing that one out to the panel.
Completely erode traditional black family. Culture Clinicians family structure is
Well, I would say societal entropy is inevitable. And human anthropology has been going on for the last 6,000 years. So I don't know what the panel guys mean by my structure is viewed as too restricted to modern black culture. Listen, That's where the evolution must occur. There are intact, successful families abroad, but unfortunately, as I said earlier, we have been indoctrinated by liberal policies. And those liberal policies have caused what I call the societal entropy that we have now. Listen, we got to get back to the basics. If the basics were sustainable 100 years ago, or the last 5,000 years, the basics can be sustainable now. The key is, are we willing to do it? Now listen, if you're not one for a traditional family, then do you. I'm not knocking the one that want to do something totally different. But I'm saying that's for me, having a family where there's strong men that love their women, die for their women, and take care of their children in their community, that's what works best for me. Anybody else want to do more or less do this, what I call neo iconoclastic type thinking? More power to them. But I'm saying, I think what's been working for the last 5,000 to 6,000 years will still work now if men do things based on principle. I did in the show, I said in the past, she only respects power and strength. And women respect power and strength. And all this compromise and all these egalitarian constructs, I think, has led to the demise, Bernard Rowley and the panel that we have now in this current milieu called America. But that's my take.
Well, do you think it's the case in this modern society, like when you talk about women respect power and strength, but in this modern society where you got women who have the ability to, take care of themselves. Like I said, they can get a little job working in some air-conditioned cubicle and make just enough to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. Now they can go and respect a bunch of nonsense that's unproductive and unbeneficial. So then, the power and strength of having that man becomes diminished. And so I think that's part of the problem, how just that's why a lot of what Kevin Samuels is doing, he's having to sell to women on the value of a man and have to walk them all through their life and do the math and break out the Crayolas to try to have an epiphany moment by the end of the conversation that, oh damn, I'm trying to make it through this life without a man. Yeah, that's mathematically not going to work out. I'm either I'll be homeless by 60, So I think that's part of the problem, part of the conundrum with trying to do that. I'll move around. Obsidian haven't said nothing in a while. I don't know if you want to respond to what me or what Coach Clinton just said, or what SKC wrote there, or anything that you heard that prompted you on anything. You want to dive in, old man?
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Yeah. I think what this all speaks to is Black folks have a problem with modernity, both Black men and Black women, and all the different reactions that we see are just manifestations of that. I hear the argument about how Black women, for example, were indoctrinated. I'm not saying that there's no truth to that. I think it's been oversold. Zora Neale Hurston in the early part of the 20th century would be considered today one of those managed type of women. I think what Black women took advantage of was the ability to truly be themselves, but didn't take into account the downsides or the trade-offs to it. I think they've always been more type A type Black women, but that they were very constrained. And in today's world, they're allowed to be type A, but it does come at a price.
Right.
Guys don't want to live with a type A woman under the same roof. Not guys that have anything going for them don't. And so that's the trade-off. And I don't think a lot of Black women want to make that trade-off.
Well, listen, I don't know if you ever heard of the woman in the city, and she's a multi-billionaire in Africa. She's an oil tycoon. That woman is a type A woman, but she has more or less been socially conditioned to adhere to the parameters of her husband. That's why I say it starts with men setting standards. That's why the evolution must start in the mind. This woman's an oil tycoon, but guess what she said, Obsidian, and to the panel that are listening? She said that when I come home, my duty is to serve my husband. Her occupation does not supersede her responsibility and her duty to serve her husband. A lot of our women got it twisted. They think that their duty supersedes their responsibility to serve their husband.
Is this an American woman that you're talking about?
No, she's a Nigerian woman. She's a Nigerian woman. But what I'm saying, Bernard, once again, Bernard, that's why I say it starts with the man. She only respects power and strength. And if she's not willing to acquiesce to what that man is expecting, he needs to divest and get with women that are willing to acquiesce. So my point is, I'm gonna do a show at some point called kosher hypergamy versus carnal hypergamy. Most American women are more or less subjugates of what I call carnal hypergamy. But kosher hypergamy is more or less predicated on spiritualism, but also is predicated on discipline. Once that kosher hypergamy is more or less activated, then that woman becomes the best version of herself because she's in unison with the power and the admonition and the expectations of that man. But if she's more or less inward or insular and more or less relying on her own self and her own motivation, then she become a victim of her own peril.
Yeah, the woman that you refer to, and I have to look her up. What's her name again?
I don't know her name, but she's an African billionaire. She's an oil billionaire.
Okay,
and she more or less adheres to those old traditions that are anthropologically sound. Her logic is that I don't give a damn how much money I make. My first responsibility is to my husband. And if most women will more or less have that mindset, then they won't have the pathologies that currently exist now. Listen, you don't have to believe in the tenets of theology. I know some people don't believe in it, so I'm not trying to push it. But the Bible is very red pill. It said that she will have a desire for her husband, but he will rule over her. And rule does not mean that she's a slave, but it means he will guide her and be the person that he needs to be. So men need to divest, de-evolutionize the form of thinking that they have, and set up standards and parameters that's going to more or less foster masculinity.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin and Sales. That woman. Well, I'll just say this: the woman. I'll try to find her and look her up. But at the end of the day, she's making a choice.
Right, it's a choice. Yes, sir. I totally agree. Right.
He can choose otherwise.
Yes, sir.
That's really the key point there.
Right.
So it's certain principles that she subscribed to, that she believe in, and she's living out those principles.
Yes,
but
sir.
The point that I make is they have the option to not do it. And so, and them having the option to not do it means that it's going to happen at a less lower percentage rate. That's the only thing I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's going to happen at a lower percentage rate, which means that yes, the man has to be pretty selective in who he deals with in these modern times. But go ahead, Kevin. Go to Kevin and Sales. Then we'll go to Friedman's Journal. Go ahead.
Well, like a bad student, I was in and out the conversation the last snippet. But from what I did here is that I don't think that society will completely erode. I think society or societies will always ebb and flow, and I think that eventually there will be women coming back to the home, wanting to get married, wanting to be conservative, and I think that
when is that going to happen?
Well, it may not happen in our lifetime. I mean, I come from a traditional family. I was always used to all my friends have nuclear upbringings, but I think that eventually things are going to ebb and flow back. I think that eventually, black men are getting smarter in terms of investing, in terms of just like what the kosher clinician and his godlike rhetoric. He's basically a saint, but he's basically saying the same thing. Black men are traveling, black men are marrying other women, and black men are eventually, in masses, are going to make more money. Therefore, they can. Let's be honest. Most men in any Western society or any society want to get married. So men are going to eventually want to marry those beautiful women that they can afford. Most men want to marry a gorgeous woman. So we're going to see a lot more black men marrying more gorgeous women, especially if they're going overseas, etc. So I think it's going to ebb and flow. I think women are going to come back home to I think they're going to come back to the house. I don't think by nature women really want to work. I think that is just something that is in the culture right now. I think women really want to be at home as housewives. And I think that's going to come back again. Maybe not in this lifetime, but maybe 50, 60 years from now. I don't know. I don't think it's going to completely erode. No, I think that the single mother epidemic is going to be over. And not over, but I think it's gonna go down to the levels that it was at probably in the 1950s. Maybe 20%. Maybe if we as black men make it, we make it shameful to be single mothers. Maybe black women will stop having kids.
I agree with that.
But then again, you as the black man, you gotta stop, having sex freely with these women who aren't your wife.
Bernard, I'll put the link in the private, man. Her name is Florunjo Alakija. Yeah. I think that's her name. I don't know if I don't pronounce it right, but that's okay. Cool.
I want to hit what Obsidian said. I read their eyes were watching God in college. Oh, that was a great book by Zora Neale Hurston, by the way. But yeah, so definitely, I think it's gonna ebb and flow. Yeah.
All right.
Because I think if we start making demands back on women the way that we're doing, I think that's the beauty of the manosphere. Women are going to want to get thinner. Women are going to want to stop with the tattoos and stop being ratchet and stop dressing like.
Be careful with that one, Kevin, because the audience blew a gasket on the show yesterday.
About what?
Said something about convincing women
convince
to engage in different behavior. Don't.
Well, it's mandatory as I'm almost finished. It's mandatory as a man. You have a divine. If any black man's in here, you are divine by nature. And the thing is that because of your divinity, you have say so. And the thing of the matter is that tattoos, purple hair, green hair, dressing half-ass outside, you need to tell women, don't do that. Stop it. Don't do that. And that's going to create a better domestic situation in the black household.
Right.
I'm done. Sorry, I blacked out.
Well, Frederick Douglass actually qualifies your position, Kevin, and says,
Yeah.
He said that power never conceded without a struggle. And I say it on my show all the time. It never have, and it never will. So I'm saying that the black man, or all men in America, are the epigenesis to power. But if you have a fragmented mindset, that's why I said we have to do the shallow work. They have to more or less recalibrate that negative schema and that those maladaptive thoughts. Then they will continue in this negative karmic cycle that they're dealing with. Black men have the power to change the outcomes. We set the precedent. We are the trendsetters. But so many black men have more or less been conditioned to be serfs. Dr. T. S. Johnson called it the CompuServe.
Yeah.
I created my own term called the commodification of subjugation instead of being the commodification of glorification. Women should be the commodification of glorification as it relates to galvanizing a man. She should galvanize a man. But a lot of our women are commodities of subjugates because they're more or less operating on a very carnal hard drive called solipsism. Solipsism means everything is about her and self outside of self. So what I'm saying to the men, in behavioral psychology, in order to change the pathology that many of our women are dealing with, in order to have what I call social equilibrium, then it must be mutually beneficial. But if it's only mutually beneficial to her, you lose power and she gains power. But in a good relationship, it must be fusion. Teddy Pendergrass said it, and I say it all the time on my show. It's so good to love somebody and somebody to love you back. And so many black men are not getting that. So I'm saying, why in the hell are black men making themselves subjugates to women that do not honor, respect? And I tell my wife the same thing. If you don't get with my program, she can go too. She can get this work. It's not a man or woman that I consider myself a subjugate to. I more or less subjugate myself to no man. I respect all, but I don't bow to none. It's not in my nature to do that. I respect you as a man, but I don't kiss nobody's ass. That's not in my nature. I'm a dominant man, so I don't do that. Go ahead, brother.
Sir, you are the second coming of Elijah Muhammad. Hey, okay, hold on for a second. I got to get the hell up out of here, guys. It's great being on the panel. But I do have one question for the kosher clinician.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to take it there with you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
How do you feel about psychedelics in terms of changing your psyche? I've started using psychedelics for 20 years. Mushrooms. Right.
As
you can tell.
Yeah. That's a tough question, man, because I look at the Judeo-Christian worldview. You know, I think psychedelics can play a role, but I think psychedelics sometimes can give you an altered state of conscious. You know, in the ancient cultures like the Indians, they use peyote, right? Yeah. They use ayahuasca. They use different things to get what's called a transcendental mindset or do transcendental meditation. But, you know, in theology, they call it pharmaconia or pharmaconesis. And so many believe in the Christian faith, if you start using psychedelics, you can be influenced by entities outside of the body. So I'm torn with it. You know, I've heard the arguments, but I'm not necessarily a fan of it. You know, I'm not necessarily a fan of it, but that's just me.
Okay, well, listen, you know, you were talking about depression. You were talking about black men not understanding who they are. Sir, let me tell you something. Now, I heard you mention you were damn near 7 feet tall.
I'm 6'6".
See, I'm 5'6", and I have a huge head, and I'm semi-ugly. So I had to develop and cultivate other skill sets growing up. So I never really suffered from depression, low self-esteem. I think being short and ugly made me clap back at people quicker. Like I was more witty in the 3rd, 4th grade when people used to say, "Oh, you're ugly," and I would get to roasting people. So I never really grew up with depression or some of these things that black men have. However, I will admit this. A lot of me and my friends have done 5 to 7 grams of mushrooms. I've smoked DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. I've smoked it about 100-something times. It really allows you to understand your existential nature within the universe. I mean, you know, I listen, I'm not promoting. People think it's drugs, and it's not. DMT is coursing through your veins right now. Mushroom is nothing but a fungi. But I really would hope that people would at least do the research. And it's scientific research. It really alters. If you are suffering from depression, if you don't think you know who you are, if you're having some sort of problems in life, man, I am telling you, there is nothing like eating 3 grams of mushrooms in silent darkness, and you really get to understanding your existential nature within the universe. You really get to understanding who you are, what you're capable of, that you have an infinite amount of possible advantages and doors that can open up at any given time. And I'm just making a disclaimer, you know. So Bernard, I know you're not promoting it. I'm not promoting it, but what I'm saying is just do your research. Look up Terrence McKenna. Look up Kundalini. He's a black dude who actually died last year. He used to do high dosages of mushrooms. So, but I know you are familiar with the study.
He died from the mushrooms.
He died, sir. That's not true. Nobody has ever died from mushrooms. Now you may have jumped out of somebody jumped out of a window 20 years ago, but they were just being stupid. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, guys, it was great being up on the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Right.
All right, Kevin himself. Y'all go check him out. Freeman's Journal. You was trying to get in there for a while. Thanks for your patience. Go ahead. You got the floor. You got the mic.
Unmute yourself, brother. Unmute yourself.
You're muted. You're muted. And you're frozen too.
Thank
there you go.
All right. So they're talking about the black family, and actually O'Shea did a video on this. It seems that the concern is that there's going to be a generation of black women left out in the cold. Basically, as black men free themselves to do something else. All right. And like you were saying, Brother Kosher Clinician, about power never concedes.
Right.
Black women aren't going to just leave their power. You know, they've had Oprah in the media for so long, so they're going to dig their heels in. And so the only real outcome are consequences.
Yes, sir. That's
so
right. I totally agree.
When
yes,
black
sir.
women are feeling those consequences and they can't be ignored, and you have a whole generation of 40 and 50-year-old professional women that are alone, then they become the warning to the younger generation. The younger generation goes, ooh, that look rough.
Right.
I don't think I want that. And then they're going to get their act together. But I think that cohort of women that are going to die alone, I think, is unavoidable.
Yes, sir. Right. The evolution turns to a revolution. But it must first start with the Man Freedman Journal. It got to start with the man first.
Absolutely.
Right.
We enforce that upon them. It's like, well, we're not putting up with this. You can go do what you want to do. But then that comes to the flossing part, right? Got to floss that lifestyle. Like, these wives got it made. What you doing?
Right.
You know, you're either paying a man or yourself digging out your driveway in February. My wife's not. You know, you got a pool, but you're lugging chemicals around trying to put it in it, or you're paying a man to do it. My wife's not. So your lifestyle is an Instagram falsehood.
Right.
So we just got to point that out.
Right, and most men, brothers, are actually wired to support and love good women. You know, in the esoteric, the man is the sun and the woman is the moon. She should reflect his glow or his glory. And so most men are active. They're like an active force. They want to more or less, provide for their women. But see, we create simps because many simps have more or less been conditions of taxation without representation. And so these men have been more or less conditioned, once again, to be subjugates of the women that don't support them. I did a show called Taxation Without Representation, the mental breaking of the American male. And so many men have been conditioned through social conditioning and social engineering to be subjugates of women that are not reinforcing the good behaviors or qualities they want. And so it's like an ongoing cycle. I got to keep giving to make her feel happy. But in actuality, Raekwon the man don't have to do nothing. Women only respect power and strength, man. And my job is to teach men that they got to deconstruct that negative and those maladaptive thoughts that they're dealing with.
Oh, absolutely.
Good stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Y'all make sure, if you haven't already, make sure you go subscribe to the Culture Clinicians, doing great content and great work over there. Make sure you go subscribe to them.
I appreciate it. Very time consuming.
Oh yeah.
but I appreciate it.
Yeah, right. No, I'm pretty much at the end of it here. Okay, right when I was on the verge of wrapping up, Osama Abdul came through with a $2 super chat. He says, "BR and oh man, what type of team is it? BR, tell me. Team for the ages. But we about to wrap this bad boy up at the 2 hour and 30-minute mark. I just want to, formally thank you for coming on the show, man. You did
thank you, brother. I'm honored to have come. Hopefully you can come on my panel, and I would love to do it again. These kind of cogent discussions are vital, but also they're very much necessary. So I count on the honor and the privilege to be part of the platform. Shout out to Obsidian. Shout out to Freeman's Journal and Kevin and Sales. But these conversations are powerful. I believe in male empowerment. Male empowerment is paramount to men being mentally and socially healthy. And so until we empower black men and let black men know that they have inherent worth, because they got to have inherent worth. Because remember, we're descendants of people that were more or less seen as 3/5 human. But until we realize that we have inherent worth, then we will continue on this downward cycle that we're seeing now. So I'm honored, man. Thank you for allowing me to come on, man. And hopefully we can have this conversation again, Bernard. Thank you, brother.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely come on your platform as well. But like I said, anybody who came in today, who joined the panel, who watched the video, who liked the stream, or if you just watched in indifference, even the, let me see how many people thumbed it down today. 5 people, even the 5 people that thumbed it down, hit the thumbs down. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for participating in the show today. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Peace.